Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to the Mesa City Council study session for the morning of November the 7th. We have with us 5 of our council members, and I think we have Mr. Freeman and Mr. Heredia are on the phone. Mr. Freeman, are you with us?
I am. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, are you with us as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we're all present and accounted for. First item on our agenda, item 1A, is a presentation and update on Mesa Police Department's drone as a first responder technology.
Hey, Mayor, as they're coming up, there's a few items on this study session that will be on your November 18th agenda. So because we're not having the 14th study session, so we're trying to give you some of those briefings ahead of time. And this is one of the items that will be on the November 18th agenda.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having us. I'm Stephanie Daravan, the Metro Commander for the Police Department, and with me is Randy Wilson, our Aviation Administrator. We wanted to share with you a little bit about the Drone as First Responder program that we're looking to expand our ability to provide situational awareness to our officers in a more timely manner, and this aligns with our Real-Time Crime Center, kind of expanding our capabilities there. So a little bit about Drone as a First Responder. It originally started in San Diego or Chula Vista, California in 2018, and it allows for agencies to use drones to deploy to calls for service in a timely manner, oftentimes getting on scene well before officers do. So what we will do here in Mesa is we will launch our drones off of, initially right now we're doing it off of headquarters until we move into our automated program, which we'll explain to you. But it's based off of headquarters currently. We do have to have a remote pilot, so the person flying the drone, or a visual observer on the roof at headquarters. And then currently we are operating it out of the Real-Time Crime Center. So somebody in the Real-Time Crime Center is actually launching and flying the drone from the Real-Time Crime Center. But we have to have somebody on the roof currently with technology to be a visual observer to look for manned aircraft. And then we've been doing this since about 2020, or looking at it since 2023. We started in May of 2024, actually launching flights off of headquarters. And currently we have 6 pilots in command, or remote pilots in command, and 3 of them operating out of the Real-Time Crime Center. Our current drone is an M30, DJI M30T, which gives us about 25 to 30 minutes of battery life. And we've done about 250, a little over 250 DFR flights so far. So what this does is it gets us eyes on more quickly. Drones don't have to deal with traffic, whereas a patrol car gets dispatched to a call for service, they start deploying and they've got to deal with traffic, whereas our drone can get there very quickly. And oftentimes this coupled with live 911, in real time we hear that call for service much quicker, and we can get the drone overhead to provide situational awareness for our officers responding. So I'll let Randy talk a little bit more. Go ahead, questions?
Councilmember.
Yes, I have a question. Would you go back to, you said something about there does have to be a person at the scene?
Currently.
Could you elaborate
Yes.
on that just a little bit?
Yes.
I'm not understanding.
So right now, with what we're calling DFR 1.0, we have to have a visual observer. So there has to be somebody up on the rooftop to scan airspace looking for manned aircraft. Obviously, we don't want to conflict. Required by the FAA, correct. This is a requirement until there is a technology piece to detect manned aircraft.
So how does that work as far as the drone getting to a place before the person, I guess?
The person doesn't, so the drone is on top of headquarters currently.
Okay.
In the Real-Time Crime Center, we get a call for service, and we know the address is 20 East Main.
Okay.
The drone launches and comes over 20 East Main. Our visual observer on top of headquarters just needs to be able to scan the airspace and say, yes, there's no manned aircraft in the area.
Okay.
There's not going to be a conflict between manned aircraft. So,
Interesting.
Because
Okay.
the Real-Time Crime Center obviously is in the building, right? And
Right.
they just have what's in front of them on the screen. So the observer can see
can
all the
see,
other
they're the
airspace.
they're the eyes to say, yes, there's no manned aircraft. Our drone is safe to operate in this airspace.
Okay.
And currently, we have to have a person up there to look for this. The next step in this is using technology to take the person off the roof. Because especially here in Arizona, it's hot. And we don't want to have people up there on the roof when it's 120 degrees. in Chula Vista, California, they can get away with it. So they have maintained the visual observer model. But the next step in DFR is to move to no visual observers, and that is the current waivers that are being sought through the FAA. And actually, New York City just received one of the first ones, provisional. So that's pretty exciting. But I'll let Randy talk a little bit about DFR 2.0. So where we are currently is we have visual observers on the roof. Where we're going is no visual observers.
Hey, good morning. As Commander Daravan mentioned, I'm Randy Wilson. I'm the Aviation Administrator. So I handle manned and unmanned aircraft. And kind of what we're seeking here right now is the FAA puts a lot of rules and regulations on us when we're flying drones, just like they do on manned aircraft. So we have already received some added privileges or some added exemptions from the FAA, and one of them is called beyond visual line of sight. So normally when you start flying a drone, you have to be able to keep an unaided line of sight on that drone. So you have to be able to see it no matter where it is, no matter what it's doing. We've received authorization, probably it's been about a year since we've had it. It's quite an extensive process to get that exemption. We have to prove a lot of points. Foundationally, we have to show that we have a program, a UAS program in place to begin with, and show that we've done that well. We have policy, we have training, we have recurrency, and we have proper oversight and policies that dictate that or that oversee that. So, and upon reviewing that, they give us beyond visual line of sight. So right now, we can fly beyond what we can see with an unaided eye. So we just have to, at this point, we just have to know where the drone is. We don't have to necessarily see the little drone, but we have to be able to see that drone and be able to see 2 miles past that. So the FAA has said, in order to do that, we're good with you flying out 2 miles. So you can fly the drone 2 miles, but you need to be able to see 2 miles past that visually. So there is a limitation, and we can use binoculars, we can use our software to say, okay, we know the drone's there, we already know what height we should be at, and some of those lines. As you asked a second ago, how do we get there? Well, we can just enter in coordinates, and the drone will take off and go there automatically with us telling it what to do. So it's not AI, it doesn't act on its own. We have to still tell it what to do. And there is nothing that looks at any type of AI process on this. It's all, hey, we tell you where to go, what to do, and what altitude, some of those lines. So right now, that's 1.0. So right now, we're looking at to get that person off the roof, because the person off the roof, right now, we have probably, as Commander said, 200 to 250 calls for service that we've responded to. But we have to have that pilot up there. We have to have a visual observer, and then we have to have another pilot, or remote pilot, so to speak, in the real-time crime center. That is very, like a Commander mentioned, that's a little bit harsh up there at 100 and some odd degrees to be up on a roof and trying to maintain this. So what we're seeking now is that beyond visual line of sight without a visual observer or without pilots on the roof. So we have a hangared aircraft, which, if you want to show this is kind of where we are going. It's exactly where we're going with the company. And it shows, if you're looking at the PowerPoint, it shows the drone landing on top of a little hangared aircraft, or a hangared box, so to speak, that's mounted on the roof, either at headquarters or at 20 East, which we've got the infrastructure up there. It will land. The robot will change the batteries on the drone. It's air-conditioned, heated, mostly air-conditioned, in state of, I think heat is kind of counterproductive on it, but for the most part, it's air-conditioned. So it's all nice and cozy up there, so to speak. It can land, change the batteries, and lift off within about 50 seconds to a minute, depending on what, how fast the drone or the robot works on there. But on average, we timed out about 54 seconds-ish, and it could be available to relaunch. So at that point, we can relaunch it, send it anywhere we want to. With that, we no longer need the visual observer or the person on the roof, which, number one, visually make sure that we're not going to run into anything, mainly aircraft. But it also, we don't have to have a person up there changing the batteries. So that's what we're looking at right now, and we're seeking permission, and we have a contract company that we're are seeking to gain a contract with a company that will do all this for us and essentially make this very easy for us. So the only person that we would have operating this or dealing with this would be the pilot in the real-time crime center. And he can tell it, she can tell it what to do, where to go, and get that real-time, video information to our people on the ground.
And this particular vendor, what they offer that's different than others is a radar solution. So they have a radar device that will scan the airspace for us, so that takes your visual observer off the roof. The other companies that are currently existing use camera systems, essentially, high-speed camera systems that are scanning. But the radar solution gives us the opportunity to be 24/7 versus daylight hours only. So Aerodome is the company that we are looking to partner with as a sole source to put our docking station and radar station up on the roof of 20 East Main.
So is the agenda item that the meeting, the contract with Aerodome?
It's the contract with Aerodome,
Okay.
correct.
Gotcha. Mr. Summers?
What's the service area for this drone? Is it
This
gonna
will
be
get
West
us
Mesa
about
or everywhere?
everything west of Gilbert Road
Okay.
with this particular radar device and this drone. So
And then what are we gonna do about the east side?
that will be an expansion. This is proof of concept, and yeah, we would have to deploy additional. We could do the whole city with 3 radar systems, so,
Okay. And we've coordinated this with the 2 airports that we have?
oh, yes.
Yeah.
We work
And,
very closely with them.
And then what's the time on station for the drone?
We did about 30 to 45, or the drone that it comes with this program is about a 35 to 40 minute, and it really obviously depends on whether, how much wind you're fighting against, but about 30 to 40 minutes. So
That's pretty decent.
pretty decent time frame.
And that includes, and then the flight time on top
Correct.
of that?
And it knows how much time it needs to return to home, so it's going to maintain, it's not going to let you keep it out there too long. And then obviously on scene, we have our patrol-based drones that, if we have to bring DFR back, we have had time now to deploy one of our patrol-based drones. But the docking station, another thing, some of the other options are recharge. The drone would have to land and recharge. It's about a 30-minute process to recharge. This is about a 1 to 2 minute battery swap, and off it goes again.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
I'm encouraged by this, this whole concept, because I think it allows us to respond more quickly than, say, the staffed air unit would be with the pilot on there. And also back away from dangerous pursuits and still be able to track
Right.
suspects and apprehend them at a later time much more safely. So this is a
Provides
fantastic
a lot
program.
of opportunities. One of the unique things is looking at it from a de-escalation perspective. A lot of times this drone can get on scene and it can see, what call comes in, it may be very different than what's actually occurring, and the drone can come overhead and see, yeah, that's not really what's occurring, and give us that, the operator can see and give us real-time information.
And it's just a real quick question. How are we protecting privacy with this? So when we're flying overhead, and we're obviously going to be recording with this.
Yes.
If that data is available to the media, which likely it is, how do we scrub that so it's not showing somebody's backyard?
We utilize the same things we do with redactions, so we would look at that. But, it's airspace. It's the same airspace that we have access to in the manned unit. And so we're mindful of that. We're going to try and operate mostly, our focus is what the call for service is. So we're not randomly patrolling. We will be looking at calls for service. But will we capture stuff? Yes, just as we do with our manned aircraft. We're mindful of that, and, with our redactions.
Yeah,
considered.
if you're in a public space, on a public sidewalk, in a street, in a parking lot, then you are subject to be
Understand.
recorded. But people's backyards
I
those could be redacted if video is released. I think that's what the community would like to see.
Certainly.
And that would be unintentional in the fact that even with a manned unit, we can tell the camera where to go when we're en route. So in the manned unit, the same on the drone, is we'll focus it on where we're going, not looking down and what we're looking at as we go
Not
over it.
random.
So
Excellent.
we do purposely do that, and we actually policy that just in privacy. If possible, we will go ahead and concentrate that camera or focus that camera on where we're going, not incidentally on things that we fly over.
Excellent, okay. And then what would be the timeline for end of proof of concept and extending this to the other parts of the city?
I guess let's give it probably a year.
This-
Okay.
It's
just
just interesting.
yeah.
It's always the west side that gets stuff. They get the shiny new stuff.
It wouldn't have anything to do on the east side.
Thank you, Jen. She said it wouldn't have anything to do on the east side.
We're busy over here.
That's funny.
Any other questions?
I have a
Yes.
question. I guess, how does this then supplement or the existing man unit?
Well, we look at it as it augments it, because they can both work in tandem on calls for service, and obviously our manned unit is not up all the time. We have restricted flight hours just based on cost, and we're very judicious with that. But it augments our manned unit, and it can get into different places that our manned unit can't. Because it flies at a lower altitude, so it can see things a little bit differently. We have more opportunity with this because it can fly more frequently than our manned unit can. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, and I've given many presentations just on the manned side of it. We think that a manned unit and unmanned unit are in competition with each other. They're not. They're very complementary of each other. Just like Commander had said, there are certain things that we would not necessarily have the ability to go up or have budget to go up or have time to go up, or we have those drones in place that can do that, and being good stewards of our financial in our budget. But what it is just like Commander said, that we've used this, we have protocol when there is a manned unit and an unmanned unit, and there's times where we fly so high, we can fly down low, but then we're blowing all the paperwork and blowing all the trees down and creating a mess if we're in a helicopter and we're coming down that low. I think most of you have been on the helicopter, so you know the downwind effect of that helicopter. And also it brings a lot of attention. It puts our officers, they can't hear on the ground. So what we're able to do is we can get that drone and simultaneously, we can be able to see things under trees or under carports or something and not risk be a flight or risk free some type of hazard from the person or what we're looking at on the ground. So very complementary. We've realized a lot of savings. And when we do get into larger scale or longer, times when we're doing pursuits or something on those lines at the high altitudes, the drones don't have quite that technology or that length of time on airspace or the speed to keep up with a lot of what we do with these with pursuit type stuff. And the manned unit's up so high, they can't hear it anyways. And 9.9 times out of 10, they don't even know we're there. So it works out well for us. I do see technology, hopefully in the future, where we have an hour where we can then be on flight, but that's just based off of battery technology and speed of the drone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, Mr. Heredia, any questions?
No questions.
Mayor, I do have a comment. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, about 4 years ago at NLC, they brought this technology. They showed us, and I was really impressed. And I brought this to, talked about with our fire department, our police department, and I was really thankful. What I really enjoyed about was the additional safety aspect that this drone provides to our manned unit as well as to officers on the ground. And it can see ahead and help relay that information to the real-time crime center now that it's standing up. So I think, as they work together, the manned, unmanned, the real-time crime center, this will provide a faster response, safer response, and also be able to mitigate whatever crime was going on. I remember one of the scenarios, this is just a side note, was they dispatched one of their drones to a service call. And when the drone got there, the caller called in and said, "Hey, why isn't the police department here?" And the intake caller, 911 responder said, "Well, we are here, look up in the sky." And so they did, and there was no call. The proposed assault that was happening in the parking lot had dissipated, and so consequently they were able to cancel the call for the officers on the ground, as well as the drone unit was able to return back to its nest. So I thought that was one scenario. I thought just the safety aspect for our officers by deploying this. And Mr. Summers, sometime there will be something on the east side. So thank you. That's all my comment.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. I had a chat with the chief when we were at game night a few days ago about exactly this topic, and I was just saying how proud I was of our department for the real-time crime center and the fact that we've given hundreds and hundreds of tours from visiting police departments to our real-time crime center, and I appreciate the fact that this department's at the front of the parade on using technology, and so I think this obviously is the future of police work, and I'm glad that we're at the front of it. So looking forward to voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Thanks, Viv.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, item 1B is a presentation and update on the results and recommendations from the Quality Retail Attraction Strategy Report.
Drone fireworks.
We really should.
All right, great. All right, thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time today. We are excited to present to you the Quality Retail Attraction Strategy. I'm Jay O'Donnell. I'm the Economic Development Director. Joining me today is Maria Lochner. She's the Deputy Economic Development Director for the City of Mesa. And then Erin Farmer is the President of the Retail Coach. And we brought on the Retail Coach to help us with this strategy, to do all of the data analysis and market research, and then to put together a strategy for us. They have been around for 25 years. Erin has been with them 17 years. And this is a project or a project model that they do all of the time for governments all over the country, as well as chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. So well respected in their field, and we look forward to sharing the information with you today. As far as what we're going to cover, we'll just give you a quick update on the timeline to date, overview of the strategy report, but what we really want to focus on today is the opportunity that exists in Mesa. And there are a lot of exciting things going on. They've uncovered, the Retail Coach has uncovered a lot of great opportunity for various regions in Mesa. It's obviously a very large city, so there are different contextual things that we need to consider when we're recruiting retail to the different neighborhoods and areas. So we'll go over recommendations for your consideration, and then we'll also talk about what we need to do in the Office of Economic Development for next steps. Maria.
Good morning, everyone. So when we originally, okay, sorry, I was doing the wrong slide. The background of this project was that City Council did approve a budget for us to contract with a consultant, and then we hired the Retail Coach about a year ago. The contract is about a year old, and they started their work in earnest in December. So the project overview is we wanted them to do a market analysis to understand the current condition of the Mesa market. And we looked specifically at 8 target areas, which I'll show you at the next slide. Once they, oh, don't go to the next slide yet. We wanted them to dig into the demographics, understand what is happening in the current market, and give us a reasoning for what has happened and what we can do in the future. A big part of that was talking to stakeholders, and stakeholders included residents, existing businesses, retailers, developers that are not in Mesa, and just understanding what the community partners think overall. And the goal of that was to come up with these recommendations about how we could move forward to attract quality retail. So here you have the 8 targeted areas. These areas are identified as retail corridors already, either through existing retail strengths or according to the general plan, what has been determined to be commercial areas. So each of these areas is distinct, and the Retail Coach did an overall view of Mesa, but focused and did a deep dive in each of these 8 areas. And the goal of that deep dive, again, are the current market conditions, understanding the demographics, and then determining what a profile of a consumer would look like. With that, I'll turn it over to Erin to talk about them.
Yeah, definitely. And to Maria's point there, having the 8 kind of distinct submarkets or districts there, I think that's important because who's going to locate in the Power Road district is going to be different maybe than who locates in the Riverview district, right? So we have to look at each of those areas individually. They each have their own trade area. They each have, maybe similar, but at the same time different demographics and psychographics and those sort of things. So it's important to look at each of these individually. Same thing with like the downtown district, right? So the downtown district in particular, we're not targeting the same retailers, the same restaurants that we would for, Superstition Springs district, right? So the downtown, as an example, is focused more on that local kind of regional type prospect there. So just wanted to add that, how important it is to look at these each individually. So we'll go through this pretty quickly here, but just to give you an idea of the draw that each of these districts have. So if I'm a quality retailer, quality development that's looking to come into Mesa or looking to come into each of these districts, there's certain criteria that I might look for, right? So for all of them, they look for your trade area. Trade area is where your people coming from to shop and eat. We know that in each of these districts, you're pulling people from outside of the district that are coming to shop and eat. And that's really what they want to know is how, if we were to locate a store here, or we were to locate a restaurant here, where are we going to pull our consumers from? So you'll see for each of these districts, you'll see a population next to it, and that's the retail trade area. So as an example, Riverview, on a regular basis, pulls a retail trade area population of about 206,000 people. But then as we look at other areas like Superstition Springs Mall area or Superstition Springs area, they're pulling, over 400,000 that are shopping and eating in that area. So it's important to look at each of these as a site selector for a retailer, a restaurant. There's other things they look at as well. Incomes, how strong are the incomes here? So median household incomes, average household incomes are those things that we look at. And then we're also looked at demand. Not just how many people live in an area, but what are they spending on a yearly basis in different sectors. So is it sporting goods? Is it casual sit-down restaurants? What we did is we identified what is that demand now. So that's where you see that 2023 demand. And then we project that out for 5 years. Retailers, especially quality retailers, they want to locate in areas where there's retail demand growth, where there's opportunity, more opportunity down the road there. So you can kind of see what that looks like here, just the different criteria that these prospects look at. And this is just a snapshot. They're also looking at age. What is the age of a district? There's certain retailers, certain restaurants that look for a younger population. There's others that look for older. So understanding the key demographics of these areas is really important as we go out and look to recruit prospects there. So you can just kind of see.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Remind me again, for some reason, I cannot get this in my head. How did you determine, I just heard everything you said, but
Sure.
how did you determine the boundaries of these target areas?
Sure. So the boundaries of the target areas those were created before, correct?
Right, based on the commercial centers that exist.
Okay. The actual boundaries were
Yes.
created, okay, so those don't have necessarily any significance as far as people coming in, measuring that?
They just exist today.
Okay,
That's
correct.
just the corridors that exist today, basically, is what we
Yes.
do. We're going to talk here in a minute about the retail trade area. And we looked at data, cell phone data, those sort of things. That's how we determine the larger trade areas.
And I
of where
get
they're
the
coming from.
areas, but the actual boundaries, I just think are very interesting,
Yes, so Mayor, Councilmember, go forth. The actual boundaries are based on existing buildings or what the general plan outlines as a commercial district. So the zoning that's in the area.
Okay.
So that's why I know they're funny shapes, but that's what has determined that. And in the future slide, when we go through each of the target areas, you'll be able to see it juxtaposed with the actual trade area.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And that's coming up here in just a second. I think it'll be good to see, here's the district and then here's the trade area. Yes, ma'am.
So on slide 6 then, is the trade area population the targeted area or the trade area?
Trade area.
So those further maps with the whole, that's the population?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Wanted to clear that up. Okay.
So I talked about the importance of demand growth. So if I'm a site selector, I want to make sure if I'm locating somewhere, we're showing positive growth. The good news here is in each of the districts, we're showing pretty strong positive demand growth. So you can see what that looks like. The Power Road Gateway Corridor is showing the strongest retail demand growth. Makes sense with the housing growth, income growth, those sort of things out there. But every group here is growing at double digits, or every district is. So that's exciting to see. We'll talk more about it, but we've already started outreach for the last 6 months or so, talking to retailers and restaurants, and we have interest in each of the districts. So that's positive, and I think the demand growth is helping drive that. Maria talked about the importance of talking to stakeholders. This is I was trying to think this year, 4th or 5th time to be in Mesa just this year. And I'm just one of a team. Our team has made multiple visits and trips out here. But, it's one thing. For those of us that live here on a regular basis, we see the same things, right? We understand it. Y'all talk to your constituents. You talk to stakeholders all the time. But we wanted to have a good understanding as well as an outsider coming in. Let's talk to these stakeholders. Let's hear what their challenges are. Let's hear what they think the opportunities are and those sort of things. So we spoke to many stakeholders. You can see some of those here on the board. And it wasn't just consumers, or it wasn't just business owners in town. We also talked to some of the, like the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. We talked to, these other areas, the Arizona Restaurant Association, those sort of things, so we could get some outsiders' views on the market as well. Some of the feedback that we got from stakeholders, we want to share that with you, but I'll just kind of run through that with you really quick here. So planning and zoning code policy interpretation can differ from project to project. We heard that, a couple of times depending on who was assigned to a project or assigned to a specific project coming in. There's a need to understand retailer requirements in relation to zoning codes. So we paid a lot of attention, we spent a lot of time looking at the zoning codes, looking at different zoning in these different areas there. We heard from some that there's a lack of existing desirable commercial centers that hinders the retail growth. So if we get a retailer, one of these quality retailers and restaurants interested, where do we put them? That's the first question we get is, hey, we love Mesa, we'd love to be there, but do you have a center that fits what we're looking for? Do you have a site? So looking at development opportunities as well. What we found is a lot of the retailers and brokers are unaware of some of the new development opportunities that are out there. So it's been an education process, if you will. It's been getting these sites in front of it. Some of these brokers we talk to say, hey, I haven't been out to Mesa in 5 years, and some of them are just from right down the road. We're like, well, you need to come out here. Let us drive you around. Let us show you around what's happening there. So awareness, marketing is really important as part of this. And then Mesa does face some perception issues, both locally and regionally by consumers. And same thing with some of the brokers that we just need to work to change some of those perceptions and get them to understand what the reality is out here, especially for those that maybe haven't been here in some time. So those are just a few of some of the stakeholder feedback we've received. But want to talk to you a little bit about the trade areas. I know there were some questions about, how did we come up with the districts, but also the trade areas. And I used to ask this question years ago. I used to say, how many people have a cell phone? Well, now we all raise our hands. Some of us have 2, right? Well, it's kind of scary to think about, but we're being tracked, whether we like it or not, with our cell phones. The thing I can tell you, we're using that kind of data for good. We're using it to understand where are people coming from to shop and eat. No personal data is shared. None of that kind of information is shared, but it helps us understand where are people coming from to shop and eat. And for each of those districts, it gives us numbers that we can take back to these prospects and say, hey, on any given day, we have 200,000 people within this district. And those analytics, that's what those retailers and restaurants are looking for there. So we're able to track, like I said, the cellular devices. We can filter that by day and time. We look at a daytime population, and we also look at a nighttime population. We can identify leakage. We can tell the people that are leaving districts and going to shop other places. Even if it's outside of Mesa, we can track that. And then it gives us an idea of where they're coming from. So we don't get specific addresses, but we're able to get specific areas through a heat map, which we'll look at here now. And this shows us, as an example, I pulled up a Safeway in Mesa, and this is able to tell us where the consumers are coming from to shop and eat. So this is a heat map. The darker the blue on the map, and it doesn't show up great on the screen here, but there's some different shades here, but it helps us understand where those customers coming from, so that when we draw those trade areas, those polygons, we know that they're as accurate as possible. I'll add this real quick. Before cell phone data was available, we used license plate surveys, and we would scan license plates. The problem with license plate data is it would not give us the exact data that we needed, and it took a lot of time to go through parking lots. With cell phone data, it's available in real time. We have cell phone data going back a week or 2 in Mesa.
To be clear, who's doing the tracking? You said we.
So we use, there's a number of different firms that are out there that we partner with that do the tracking. So there's groups like Unicast and Placer. So we're purchasing
Not
that
the
data.
city of Mesa.
It's not the city of Mesa, correct? Yeah.
Not till the drones are up, anyway.
That's not for retail strategies, though. We don't use that for retail strategy.
So it's powerful data, and if you want to be competitive in the retail recruitment game, right? So Mesa's competing with communities not just directly around you, but you're competing with communities throughout the U.S. What happens is these retailers say, hey, we're going to open 15 stores throughout the U.S. Over the next year. And this type of data will help make sure Mesa's at the top of some of those lists as we're looking to recruit those.
And then just a follow-up, this is anonymized data, which means it becomes anonymous, so you don't track it to, like, I can't see where Mary went shopping, although I think she went shopping at this store.
That's exactly
But
right.
I wouldn't be able to tell that from the data that we receive.
Correct.
Generally.
Yeah. So it's and that's what I like about it is it doesn't share any personal information or data or anything like that, but it is still a very powerful tool for determining where people are coming from. So we'll jump real quickly here into the different districts. So you'll see kind of highlighted there with that pink shading there, that's the actual district that you were asking about, the boundaries there. And then the trade area is that larger area shaded in blue. And again, we're using cell phone data as well as, you know, a lot of feet on the ground, a lot of time on the ground in each of these districts. You know, you're in this trade area as an example there, your boundaries, I mean, you lose population as you go to the north there and those sort of things. But the good news is each of your districts have a larger trade area, so they're pulling people from outside. So as an example here, this is the Riverview district retail trade area. You can see it extends south to 60 and then up north a good ways west. Well, you can see the boundaries there, but understanding the trade areas is going to be key as we move forward here. Some of the challenges with the Riverview district, lack of population density in that area, kind of an unclear center designation. Cell phone data does not show a major increase during spring training, which is interesting because you would think with its proximity to the spring training facilities and those sort of things, you would just assume that there would be an uptick, and there's not much of an uptick in that area, which therein lies some opportunities, I think, for that district in particular. And then there's quite a few restrictions that the developers placed on the center there that make it difficult to do more. Yes, sir.
Where are they going in spring training? Because we're seeing an influx in people, we know that. Where are they shopping if not in Riverview?
That's a
Do you
good
know?
question. Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact analytics on that, but they're going to places like Tempe Marketplace. They're going to just really other restaurants and shopping areas, but Tempe Marketplace is taking a lot of that.
Well,
Okay.
and remember, speaking of Chemco restrictions, they actually prohibit spring training parking in front of their businesses during the games.
Well, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, that's.
So that kind of deters retail activity from spring training. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's another good point from all the information that you gathered a few slides ago about issues that we need to address, is that if you take that approach, if the current retailers are taking an approach, you can't park here for special events, they're missing the pass-through traffic.
Absolutely. So those are some discussions that we've started and need to continue to happen with that developer, owner, those
Yeah.
sort of things.
But at the end of the day, it's not just parking, because if you park in front of a Home Depot or Walmart, you're not walking in.
Right, correct.
Right? It's, when you look at the quality of the development that's over on the other side of the freeway in Tempe, that's why they're going there.
100%.
There's hotels there, it's a mixed-use project, it's still kind of walkable-ish. It is a traditional mall that's open, but it has some pretty neat stores there in comparison to Riverview. I hate to disparage our own development, but it's you know, when you think about, you got the spring training center, the ball field, then you have a hotel, and then nothing. You have to actually walk all the way across the street, and, well, if it's the same distance, I would rather go to the nice shops and the local shops and even the unique chains that, what's that hot dog place that's over there that should have been Portillo's? Yeah.
Portillo's, yeah.
Yeah, what happened to Wrigleyville West?
Sure.
Part of it ended up on the wrong side of the freeway.
So we're working on some recommendations and some things that can be done, some catalyst projects, those sort of things to help get people to this area, shopping more, eating during spring training, but all throughout the year as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it some more, but I think it does focus down to actually having a real focused strategy and building off of that for a plan to how we bring some of this here, because I believe that other communities have been focusing on this, and Mesa's, the large city, has always kind of had that laissez-faire approach, thinking that since we are the largest city, they will come, and that's truly proven not to be the case.
Absolutely.
By the way, sorry for the casual look. I hurt my elbow, so I'm just trying to keep it a little elevated.
No, but 100% agree with you. Each of these districts need their own strategy, right? We have that overall strategy, but then our team is coming in, working with your economic development team to look at each individual district and really put together some actionable strategies to enhance all these areas.
And so, sorry, question as well. I know all these districts, we talk about the lack of density, but we're the third largest city in Arizona. We're the 36th largest in the country. I mean, we have a lot of people. We have a lot of demand. So why is it that that's as an obstacle, a challenge in every one of these areas?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's the type of development you have here. I think focusing on more of some of more of the mixed use type developments are what these retailers and restaurants are looking for nowadays. More walkable areas in some of these districts. It's just across the country, you'll see, a focus on mixed use development and, being in close proximity to retail restaurants, those sort of things. So we've heard, you've got some mixed use development projects happening right now and some others in the pipeline there. That's going to help. But I think that's the biggest thing we're hearing.
Yeah, our population's spread out over 140 square miles.
Exactly.
So it's compared to like a really urban downtown district that would have lots of, vertical population. So I think although everyone drives, we all drive everywhere, but
Right.
it is really, it takes 40 minutes, right, to get from one
Absolutely.
side of the city to the other. So although they'll drive to Gilbert or.
That's right, yeah.
So.
I'm just going to chime in on this since I don't want to be left out of the conversation. I just wonder on this whole retail strategy, how much of it is really in the mixed use and the land use of how that area comes together. Population density. You have a certain diameter, a certain area that you have to have that density. Mm-hmm. Even to get a grocery store, we've learned you have to have X amount of people within a distance of that in order to get it. So since we like to spread out and have a lot of single family, it is difficult to do the density. So if you want a great shopping center, you need to think about some apartments or mixed use, multifamily, something that brings more density in a smaller area in order to support those businesses. Otherwise, you're depending on weekends and events. We've learned this through downtown Mesa, is that, we can bring people in. We can bring in hundreds of thousands over the weekend and stuff, but the day in and day out, that's where the businesses struggle. The day in and day out. What is that Monday afternoon? What is the Tuesday, Wednesday? And not just the weekends, because on weekends, they only can handle X amount of business, and they can't staff it, they can't go up and down. So that day in, that constant business, what is it building in? And it has to be mixed use. What are we doing about building these areas as urban villages? I'm sorry I missed the placemaking thing, but I think placemaking is looking at these naturally occurring urban villages and capitalizing on with density, walkable, connected, and not have everything an isolated corner with 45 miles per hour in between. How can we bring together an area that seems like it's forming, beautify it, work with the businesses, work with, multifamily housing, make sure that it's walkable, bikeable, connected, has a sense of place, and then, that people go out for experience. If you need a new dress, it's easier to do it on the internet and have it, we do it for experience. What is that experience? What is that environment? And I think when you build that, then you're attracting the retail to it. But to think that if we have to do the retail first, they're not gonna come. We have to set the table. We have to set the table, and you get the retail that you want. And the retail that comes should reflect the demographics of that area. You know, what is their income level, what kind of shopping, what kind of restaurants do they like, whatever. And that can be different. And each place can be very rich in its place according to, it doesn't have to be all high income. It can, some of the most culturally rich places are lower income places. So, but that area, that village reflects the demographics and the day in and day out, and making it a really rich place to be and experience. So I think in the past in our economic development, we have focused more on business, but we have never thought about place or retail or how to build that sense of place, that third place people can come together. And now we're doing that. But retail by itself is not gonna save or attract what the business we need. We need to look at the bigger picture of what that area looks like, how we can make it more beautiful, how we can work with the businesses and residents and everything, and develop that together into a place to get the retail and the experience that we want.
Mayor, Councilmember Duff, could not agree more with everything you just said. I think we're all on the same page. One of the key words that you mentioned is experiential, and how do we build that experience? So we're looking at this as a partnership between planning, development services, economic development, and the private sector, because we all know without the private sector, the city can't drive this strategy. We can set the table, but the private sector has to be engaged, and planning can help push them to a higher level, and we're doing that now together. But I think your approach is right on. It really is having the right partners at the table.
I think what we can do as a council or in planning or however this is paint the vision for that area. This is an area we really want to target and enhance the experience, enhance the retail and the offerings and the services, and make sure that we have some residential there to support it. This is an area we're targeting, and then talk to the residents. What does that look like? What do you need? Talk to the businesses. This is, you know what we're thinking. What do you think? Talk to the developers. This is what we're planning, and start painting that and trying to sculpt it through all the stakeholders together, instead of it being isolated, just an internal plan that we have. I think you really put it out there in order to develop it so that it's a collaborative approach. Thanks.
So last thing I'll add, and then we'll get through these next slides really quickly here. When we say retail, we're not just talking about traditional retail, not just talking about just your traditional retail stores. Retail includes retail, restaurants, entertainment, and hospitality. So it's kind of those four pillars there. You talked about experiential retail, or experience. I think that's incredibly key. You know, a big thing we're looking at right now as well for Mesa is that entertainment aspect. So we call it retailtainment. So the kind of the merging of retail and entertainment together there, we see big opportunities for that as well. That'll help bring people to these districts, keep them there, and then there's that opportunity to shop, eat while they're there as well. Just quickly here, I want to hit on these the different areas that we looked at. You can see the Asian district has a large trade area, unique district with the good draw there as well. Some of the similar kind of challenges, opportunities, and advantages for that district. We also spent a lot of time looking at the downtown district, a lot of time walking the downtown district. I'm a big believer that if you're going to have a successful retail district, successful downtown, you have to have a healthy mix of local, regionals, and nationals, right? Playing together, working together in these areas. The nationals might not be downtown, but they're in that surrounding area. They're helping draw and bring people there as well. So spend a lot of time in the downtown area. Really, really nice, cool, great downtown, but there's opportunities. There's challenges you have to work through, and those sort of things as well. But excited to see for that district as well what those opportunities are going forward.
Okay, I'm going to chime in on the downtown.
Sure.
It's too tempting. Our hashtag in downtown is uniquely local, and we've been very fortunate to be able to have a number of businesses trying their craft for the first time and inviting others, and it's really created a wonderful atmosphere.
Sure.
And we worry as it becomes more and more successful and there's more going on, we're probably at a halfway point in all the plans that are going on, that, how can we keep these small mom and pop, how can we keep that vibe going? Because it is the experience here.
Sure.
What I want to be sensitive to is what we've witnessed. I'm lived in Mesa all my life, but I remember back on Mill Avenue, and it used to be a great place. I mean, it was awesome because it had all these local businesses. And at some point, they decided economically they were going to bring in some chains to support all the office buildings and such that were going on there. You're lucky to find a local business anymore, and no one goes there for shopping, and their numbers are down, and it's not a place anymore. So in the personality of what that area is,
Sure.
we have to think about not encroaching upon it and trying to nurture what is going on there and not try to make it something that we don't want it to be.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I mentioned our team spent a lot of time in downtown. You have a great, it's a great asset to the community. Downtown is, and you said you're about halfway there. There's opportunities, right? And I think that's the key, is figuring out what's missing, right? What are those? So for downtown in particular, the what we call the retailer match list, the prospect list we're going after, it's focused more on entrepreneurs. It's focused more on local, regional type businesses that would add to what you have going there. So more than any other district in Mesa, obviously downtown is going to be more focused on that local kind of regional feel to it. So would love to spend more time with you talking about downtown and what the opportunities are there. But we've got some ideas that I think are going to add to it, and would love to talk through those with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you do a deep dive when it's to downtown. And talk in your stakeholder stuff. You didn't include downtown, and it is a huge focus for our city.
Sure.
To make sure that we do it well. So talk to me, talk to our urban transformation office, talk to the Downtown Mesa Association.
Sure.
Those have to be required stakeholder interviews before you do anything.
Yeah, and we did talk to all of those.
No.
We can go after more. All of those you mentioned, we did talk to some extent. We can take a deeper dive into each of those, and I think that's the key here. Is each of these districts, it's not going to be an overnight transformation, right? But it's going to be, as we continue through this partnership, continuing to talk to more stakeholders, and would love to even get more stakeholders from you if you have some, and we'll make sure we hit all of those, whether it's in person or over the phone. The more we can talk to, the better. The better understanding we get, I think is key. So real quick, we also looked at the Fiesta District. This is a great district with opportunity, kind of a blank slate in a sense. So excited about what those opportunities are in the Fiesta District. Prime for redevelopment. I think that's the key for the Fiesta District. Yeah.
And I like to point out with the Fiesta District, the blank slate that Aaron was talking about, this is exactly the prime example of how economic development is working with planning, and planning is really taking the lead to push the design guidelines that are going to be coming to you later this year, I believe, that are going to set the stage for that mixed-use urban development that's going to create that entertainment, retail, excitement that we were talking about.
And I hope,
sorry.
I'm going to be a pain in your side. I already am, so I'm owning it.
No, not at all.
In the Fiesta Mall, I know we're doing the redevelopment of the Fiesta Mall land itself, which is enormous and a great project and stuff. But as we do that, is looking at the surrounding areas, because that is the place. It's not just one development. It is
Correct.
across this, we have four corners, and making sure they're connected and feel like a place in order to feel like people can walk safely across and feel connected like it's part of, so making it more than just one development.
Absolutely, and I think what we talk about here as a challenge is also an opportunity, and it's that continued visioning for the future. So not just looking at the Fiesta Mall site, but those surrounding areas and how do they play into each other and those sort of things. So 100% agree with you on that. Northeast Mesa District, retail trading, you can see what that trade area looks like there. strong district opportunities, higher income levels as you get into that area. There's actually available land for development that's readily available right there. So some opportunities there. Superstition Springs retail district with the mall kind of going through a transformation and those sort of things. There's some opportunities in that area. But again, redevelopment opportunities. We talked about mixed use earlier. Some mixed use opportunities in that area as well. Again, collaborating with the city for a vision for that area for the future, I think, is going to be key. There's some pad sites, some larger parking lots in that area that could be redeveloped into some nicer quality retail areas as well. And then the Power Road corridor, and really Gateway, we lumped them together because the trade areas are going to be similar there. But we talked already about higher incomes out in that area, population growth, and the trade areas out there. A lot of opportunity. We've had quite a bit of interest to start with, or already from quality retail, restaurants, entertainment users that like that corridor and want to be out there for the future. Again, land for development out there, higher income levels, good or really strong traffic flow along Power Road, close to the airport, Gallery Park. A lot of good things happening out there, and some new unique offerings coming along with the Cannon Beach development out there. So excited about some opportunity in that area. And then
Arizona Athletic Grounds is another potential draw.
Right, and after this meeting, I'm touring that area. So
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So
And then
excited about
across
that.
the street, I would recommend you look at the type of development that's going on at the airport, because the folks that are literally flying their personal airplanes in
Absolutely.
and staying night overnight are going to bring in some money.
Absolutely.
I'd like to capture that in Mesa and not let that escape.
Absolutely. And then the Gateway District, same thing. Like I said, trade areas similar to the Power Road. Again, a lot of the same things there. We talk about at Arizona Athletic Grounds, how it attracts 2.5 million visitors a year, or attendees a year, hotel room nights that are there. That's a huge area we're going to focus on as well. So, am I doing this one?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. I want to make sure. Hinge
You
factors.
did all mine already.
So, okay, that's right. We get asked, what can be done? Right, we talk about some of the challenges, but we also talk about opportunities. One of the things to look at is incentives. Mesa, I mentioned this already, but you're competing regionally and also nationally for these high quality retail prospects, these high quality prospects. And so what our recommendation would be to consider incentivizing the catalyst projects, those that are going to help, set the stage for additional development. When they locate there, others are going to follow, those sort of things. You're a little bit hindered compared to other states with what incentives you can do, but there are opportunities out there, and those are some things we're working on, brainstorming to come up with. Continue focusing on a multi-year recruitment strategy. The thing I tell our clients all the time is retail recruitment is not an overnight process, right? It's not an overnight event. It's a process that takes time, and deals take longer and longer to happen than they ever have. Whether it's construction prices or other things happening in the world, but that's continuing regular outreach to these prospects, whether it's retailers, whether it's these mixed-use developers, but staying in touch with them, attending trade shows, which we've already done with a couple with Mesa. In fact, just yesterday, we were at the Salt Lake City Retail Live Conference, out there pitching Mesa to prospects. And then continue to focus on high impact types of development, including the mixed use development we discussed, which provides for a higher level of retail space to accommodate the higher level of prospects you're looking to recruit. So, like I said, we've spent a lot of time in the community. Our goal is to know it as well as some of your best real estate agents. If we talk to a prospect, hey, here are the 5 sites that make sense, what you're looking for, and if we can provide those sites to them, it's going to speed that process up. So lastly, just some really quickly, strategy recommendations. Short term, actively continue to recruit local, regional, and national prospects. Establish and enhance relationships with brokers and retailers in the area. We've already started that, talking to a lot of those brokers in the greater Phoenix area that really are gatekeepers. They're the ones making these recommendations to these prospects. Attend the trade shows. we're working right now with your team to enhance the economic development retail website or web pages that are out there so that if a prospect, while we're in this meeting, is looking, they can find the information they're looking for. And then working to create a marketing campaign to shift some of those perceptions that we talked about the market and to recruit others. Long-term, enforce city code to enhance corridor beautification in certain areas, market Mesa as a destination in a lot of these different publications that are out there, creating marketing campaigns for visitors that are attending or not attending, but are staying at the local hotels, attending conferences, destinations in the area. Hey, we've got a lot of offerings here. Maybe it's spring training. Hey, come to these areas to shop and eat. Focus on redevelopment, consider incentives, and then take a more proactive approach to improving the architectural quality, design, and walkability of certain areas, certain retail developments, and looking, to your point, to create that retail experience. So last slide, but just to give you an idea, we've already done outreach to 80 plus retail prospects on Mesa's behalf. We're working with 10 plus retailers and restaurants right now to locate in Mesa. We're helping provide sites. We're getting them the data, the information they need. We already have 5 letters of intent from retailers and restaurants since we began just a few months ago that they're looking to come to Mesa. Some of those have actually turned into actual deals, leases that are coming in. And then some of the things we've heard, why not Mesa? Might not have a current franchisee. They're focused on other areas at the moment. They've got locations in surrounding areas they feel like cover the market. Not enough parking, so parking is something we're going to be working with planning on for some of these prospects that are looking to come in, and then not having those suitable spaces. But lastly, I'll hand it over to Jay.
Thank you. So as far as the plan of work for FY25, much of what was talked about in the strategy recommendations we will be implementing for year 1. And as Aaron mentioned, this is a long-term campaign. So we'll continue to attend trade shows, generate leads, and really enhance the relationships with the brokers and developers. And really, I think the key is to focus on marketing Mesa as a destination for enhanced lifestyle, retail, restaurant, the entertainment and hospitality. Some of it is coming, and being able to just really elevate that on a regional stage. I think that there's well-known retail already in Mesa, and the residents have a good feel for what's here. But in terms of getting outside Mesa, there are still a lot of people that I hear from who have not been to Mesa in 10 years, and they really don't understand how it's changed and grown, and there's just been such an evolution over time. And I think that they're pleasantly surprised when they do come and see how Mesa has changed and grown. So being able to tell that story and getting more people to come here from the greater Phoenix metropolitan area is really key. Next slide. So as far as our office, we're already in process working on a lot of these strategy recommendations. We're updating our website to include retail as an industry. We have all these other industry profiles that we've worked on. Retail will be one of those that's highlighted in terms of building other things. We've also focused on updating our sales collateral, and then really defining what our key performance metrics are going forward. We know that with our other industries of opportunity, we focus on capital investment and number of jobs created and those average salaries. Retail has a little bit of a different flavor. I think what we really want to do is focus on those catalytic projects that are mixed use, and it's not just a 1 or 2 off, but it's a mix of retail, restaurants, and entertainment in a particular area. So focusing on that density. And I think that's it. Questions or comments?
Great, thank you. Ms. Pillsbury.
For what it's worth, I'm just gonna bring this up one more time. I'll bring it up for the next 4 years. There's a huge hole in this, and it's called District 2. It's what I always bring up, and I'm gonna keep bringing it up. And maybe this isn't necessarily for you, because I get that you can't do the whole city and you have to pick your priorities. I brought this up in the committee meeting that I really think we're missing Main Street and Power Road north of 60. I said this a few months ago. North of the 60 down into Alicia's district is just getting worse and worse because it's not getting any attention. And I feel like and Main Street's not getting any attention. So if we just keep not giving it attention, it's just gonna get worse and worse. And these are two big thoroughfares of our city that are just completely ignored all the time, and they're becoming a problem in our city. And I think we've got to give some attention to it, whether that's the infill development stuff that we want to look at. But I'm sad that my entire district is not included in this presentation. I have, of course, Dana Park, because that's the only thing people associate District 2 with. So I'm glad to have that attention on Dana Park, but there's nothing else in my district that there's any attention being brought to. So I'm going to keep bringing it up.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because after we talked about it at the committee meeting, I did spend some time there. And even though it's not necessarily on here, we've already looked at some opportunities in those areas. So I don't want you to think it's forgotten about or anything like that. We have spent some time out there, and I plan to spend more time out there as well.
I get it. You have a huge city to try to cover, and you guys picked 8 areas or whatever, but
Sure.
it's just frustrating that continues to get no attention, so
Right.
thanks.
Mr. Summers.
What do you need to make this successful?
Mayor and Councilmember Summers, that's a loaded question. We've already altered some of our staff resources in terms of focusing on retail. So trying to really shift some of the focus for project management to retail. So Elise Gobat is one of our project managers leading this effort, along with Maria, her supervisor. So I think we've dedicated some resources there. From a marketing perspective, if we really want to shift perceptions of Mesa, we are going to need some dedicated resources around a marketing campaign. And we can do the research and development and figure out what that could look like and what that would cost and come back to you. But I think that we're willing to kind of get that ready and bring that back and show you what we could do and how we could really deploy that in a regional way to help from a consumer perspective, because you have to change the consumer mindset first, and it will also change developer and broker perceptions as well.
And then for Nana, who's out here, and Mary, the same question, what do you want? Because there are comments in here, planning and zoning code interpretation differently, there's a need for a retail requirement, all that stuff. Zoning is part of this and development is part of this. I think to some extent, that comment is unfair, because we have development partners who have fallen far short of visions that were set with them in participation. I'm thinking about what happened to Wrigleyville West. Oh, you invest in us and you help us build this new facility, which was great and the voters approved. We're going to build Wrigleyville West. I see a hotel sitting in the middle of the grass. The rest of it isn't there. I look at areas that developed in my area that had, looking at the numbers of the disposable income that are in this area, and developers said, we're going to do these beautiful things, and it ends up being a car wash, self-storage, a frickin' Denny's. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with Denny's for breakfast from time to time. I'm just saying that's the level you could get? Really? So what are we doing to on one hand, we want to facilitate better development. On the other hand, we need to hold people accountable for the promises and the visions that they put forward. So this, for you, sir, is a tough balance, right? So what do you need in support to try to realize those visions and get better development going?
Mayor, Council Member Summers, I think Mr. Brady actually addressed this even with the placemaking discussion, where we find ourselves in a very tough balance. So I do agree. This the feedback from the development community is something that we continue to work on. I personally continue to have one-on-one lunch meetings to really hear their feedback on ways that we can improve. But at the same time, we are in a position to really facilitate high-quality development. And as you know, I always tell the development community and even City Council, planning is not static. when they talk about looking at a zoning code, you look at location and the intent of the zoning code. I always say if planning was static, you will not have city planners in the office. You will just have a program that will run it because it's very static. There's a reason why planners go to planning school for so many years to really teach them the principles and the strategy. So we look at, yes, sometimes we look at a project, we look at the location, and we look at the general plan, we look at the zoning. When we talk about compatibility in one location may be totally different. And so there's so many factors that we look at. Having said that, when we hear this, and I've had this conversation with Jay, because we did not take this response lightly, because Mary and I and all my staff really, really take our job seriously. There are times where we've been flexible to really facilitate and make the development move forward. And there are times we don't have that flexibility. There are times we are limited with the policies that are in place. And I continue to have this discussion. So as of what I need, that's a bigger question. We had our Mesa Stars yesterday with Mr. Brady. There are so many things that we talked about that will continue to move forward. But right now, I did not know this was going to be an answer. But we've had good staff. We've added new staff. One of the positions that we're working on right now is possibility of having an urban design planner who will help with the placemaking. So that's one thing that we're working on.
Okay, and I did put you on the spot on this one, but I think it's important that we're all part of the team, and if we're going to put a shoulder into this, it's incumbent upon the city council, and I'm sorry to bring it up, Mayor, we're going to put you in your wheelchair, and congratulations on your service, but we have new leadership and one more new council member coming forward. We have a strategic planning session that we do every year. I think we need to really put some effort into having a robust discussion about this, what this looks like, and then roll that into our budget discussions next year. And if this is important to all of us, then we need to make sure that it's well-funded, well-coordinated, and that we draw in the development community and some of our partners who should be more present at things like this. I'll mention one. Thank you.
Alicia?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Summers, and I have to say, this still feels to me very, and thank you for everything you've done. This really kind of doesn't include you, I guess. Unfortunately, you're sitting up here, but this feels disjointed to me still. This does not feel like a cohesive effort. I know you said we're with planning, and we talked to planning and we talked to other departments, but we are not getting that. Planning presented a week or so ago separately. You're presenting today. Planning wasn't even up here. What is their role? Because as Jenna said, this is not just economic development and marketing. This is land use and planning and development intertwined. It doesn't feel like a cohesive, overarching plan. It doesn't present like that to me. And as you can tell, this is extremely important to the six of us. And I feel like we haven't hit the mark yet.
I'll defend him a little bit. We just lit this fuse like a year ago, right? So
We've talked about this for 2 years since I got on council, and I think beyond. So
sure.
It's been
but
going on
we had a conversation about we have to tie these things together. So they're off doing their thing. Planning's got theirs. We had a great conversation on placemaking that was very timely. We need to bring this all together. I think one of the venues that we could do that is going to be our strategic planning session here, probably January, February. This needs to be, your concern needs to be a focused discussion there, I feel. Because you're not wrong. I'm agreeing with you. It's just, I think we have to tie this together. It's a timing thing. Now is the time to get this going in the right direction.
But I don't think that we are going to determine that. I think we're looking to you all to tell us how this plan comes together with every department. That's my position. You think it's that we should be telling them how the plan comes together?
No, I see where you're going with it. I
Yeah,
think, I agree with that, so maybe I'm misinterpreting it. But to create the strategy, they need to inform the strategy. So having that come forward to us, right? But putting it together is on us to say this has to get done.
And the
Yeah,
resources.
I think we're on the same
get,
page.
you know, we certainly need to, but I think the 6 of us are feel strongly enough about this, 7, whatever. We need to dedicate some serious resources. It's not going to be.
Nice knowing you, Mayor.
She looked at you, I'm just saying.
Yes,
I'll
I've
weigh
already
in at
written you
the right
off.
time. Go ahead.
No.
So, Mayor and
and-
Councils, I agree with what you're saying. I think that what you've seen so far is where we are to date. And this is the strategy. And so going forward, we've given you some recommendations to consider and an approach. Each department has their own lead role in various priorities and projects. And this is one piece of a much larger puzzle. And if this is a priority that council wants us to really drive forward, there will be a lead department with supporting departments. This is happening in the redevelopment piece. It's happening with placemaking. There is collaboration and communication happening behind the scenes. If we need to formalize the process in a different way, we certainly can.
It would be great, like, I just don't see how planning is incorporated into this. And 2 weeks later, I didn't see how you were incorporated into planning. That's what I'm saying. I believe you when you say you're behind the scenes working together. I know you're talking, I know you are, but it's not coming out.
Yeah, so Mayor, Council, I mean, we don't label it, right? Because it's what we do. And I know you were getting frustrated, but we were in a meeting almost every week where I've got planning, economic development, and I've got our infrastructure staff there, I've got legal there. And we're having this conversation about, okay, we have a proposed development. Here's what they want to do. Should they be putting residential on a major corner of an intersection? No, not a good idea. Tell them no, tell them to push it back. We have development that wants to bring in unique restaurants. How do we then incentivize? How do we come to council and justify using public dollars to bring in private activity? And what's your tolerance for that? How far are you willing to go with that? Because that's a conversation that is real that we're having is like, okay, get the development right as far as where we think the mix of retail, the commercial side versus the mixed use. But we don't want to, but the problem with that is developers think the idea is I bring as much residential as I can, and maybe I'll put in some commercial because I'm going to make a lot more money off of that. And so we're having that conversation. I don't know what we label it, it's just what we do. It's everything it's the conversation that we're having all the time. It's called placemaking, it's called retail strategy, but we don't think of it in terms of a program or a label. We think about that's what we do.
But and this is what I meant by transactional. And I understand every project's different, right? But I think that's why you have the feedback from the development company, the development industry saying it changes all the time. It is very transactional. What do we tolerate for this project? What do we tolerate for that project?
And Nana just said it. Everyone is that way.
What was that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they don't
Everyone is site-specific and absolutely transactional. When we're having conversations at Ellsworth and Williamsfield for a major resort, it's a different conversation than what we're talking about at Fiesta Reimagined. There's some underlying values there, but it's very different. The context is very different. What the developer values as the most important part of their project could be a resort hotel, and the other one could be looking at an entertainment activity.
But we should have a certain set of principles we're always working towards, right? Yes, you're right.
I think we do, but it is absolutely transactional. That's almost everything we do. It has values behind it because we are trying to create the connectivity and maximize the value of the property and bringing in quality development. But when you're dealing with developers, that's transactional. It's all about how do you make that happen? What is the cost of bringing in a major retail destination? It's not, those retail destinations know they're going to ask for fees from the developers to bring their development there. So we're trying to work with that developer and figure out what's the right balance of public dollars whether a reimbursement of construction sales tax or reimbursement of sale. We just did that, right? We just did that with 2 major car dealerships. They took a year to accomplish, and it was transactional. And yet each one of those, if you go look at them, the one we did for Horn, the one we did for Burge, they're similar, but they're very different because of the types of development that are surrounding it. So yeah, we're doing this every day. And we're working on 70-acre developments and 300-acre developments right now. And so we take each one of those in the context of the value we want. High quality, we're trying to create jobs, we're trying to create destinations. So we are doing that.
Then why aren't we satisfied, I wonder?
I think we,
I don't know, I would talk to
Because-
Councilman Heredia. We're working 2 major projects in his district. We're working with Councilmember Summers on East Marketplace in his district. So yeah, we're having those conversations every day.
when we develop, though, and make decisions on whatever is going through planning or zoning or whatever like that, we're not often just very transactional about that parcel, but not that area. That if we're trying to create a retail or an experience area, and this is not, car dealerships aren't that, I understand what you did that, and I think it's under a separate bucket. But if we want this retail experience to attract the entertainment and the retail for residences to have, I think we have to look beyond the piece of property that it is going on that corner. What is across the street? What is surrounding it? How does it connect to the neighborhoods? Could a neighborhood even walk there? Could we do that? If we are creating that urban village in an identified area, how are we cohesively working with the other areas to do this if we're trying to do, now, I don't expect that in every corner of our city, but if we're going to have these retail destinations, these retail areas, I call them urban villages, we have to identify with that. And every decision made within that circumference and where we have drawn it, is it getting us to what we're wanting to do? I was hoping through a retail study that we would learn how to design, construct, attract, set the table. I wasn't searching for someone to open the Rolodex. I think we have to set the table, and I opposed to incentives. I think they can do more harm than good, given we haven't set the table. I would rather see those dollars going into looking at these places.
So I'll add really quick. So the visioning piece of it, we didn't jump too much into the visioning piece today just because of time. But every district, we're not just looking at one property or, hey, where can we put this retailer? But it's looking at the entire vision. And I'm an outsider. I work with cities all over the country. And I'll tell you, I've been impressed with the collaboration between departments here. Being able to call up planning and zoning quickly and figure something out, that doesn't usually happen in larger communities. So I've been impressed with that part of it, but I think the visioning going forward is going to be key. Here's the thing, it takes time to recruit these retailers, these quality entertainment users, those sort of things. You're looking at 2 to 3 years when you first make contact before they locate in your community, right? So the visioning and the recruitment, or the visioning and the outreach, almost have to go side by side, because you might have this really awesome urban village planned, but then if you don't have prospects or somebody to go into those villages, then you're kind of up a creek, right? So it's got to go hand in hand. And the first part of it was just understanding this, getting that. So the real fun that I think y'all are talking about, the real visioning, those sort of things, that's what's coming. And that's why there's so much collaboration going on now and planning in the future between economic development, planning, and the other departments that the city manager mentioned. So that's what I'm most excited about. But they have to run together, because we've got to know who's interested, we've got to know what those opportunities are, and then we've got to have that vision as well.
I think we have to be very careful. We'll use Bass Pro Shops as an example.
Sure.
In which we gave it a sales tax incentive. 15 years, has it been 10, 15 years later? We're still not even past the incentive period. It didn't do what we thought it was going to do. Riverview isn't designed to capitalize on it. Bass Pro, was it I don't know. So here we have the incentive, we get this great chain retail, and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's part of this partnership is focusing on
It's
that
about the
part of
place.
it.
It's about the place and creating that environment that people want to be, and it hasn't happened, and that still hasn't got past the incentives. Their sales tax is still working off the incentive.
So to your point, I'm not a huge fan of incentives either, but I realize they're necessary in certain situations, right? And that's the other part of this partnership with our team is really looking at those specific opportunities, looking at, does a project, does it need an incentive? And why does it need an incentive and those things? So a lot of what you're talking about, completely agree with, but it's taking a deep dive into those different projects and really that's part of this partnership also.
And our competing surrounding communities are highly incentivizing development. And when the people are telling us about making choices, they follow the money. And we've, in the past, haven't been a big, strong proponent of incentivizing retail, mainly because of Bass Pro. But what we're finding is we can't compete just on saying, well, just come to Mesa because we're Mesa. That doesn't work anymore. You have to employ some kind of incentive to target the right kind of development to bring it. And because if we had incentivized those car dealerships, they'd all be in Queen Creek. If we don't incentivize, unique quality development, it's not going to choose to come to Mesa.
And I think I would agree with you, Chris. I mean, I've seen it happening, but it can't just be about the end user. And that's Jen's point. That it's got to be about the entire development. We can't just incentivize. There has to be something unique about the development. They can't just bring something that we want and stick it in another strip mall. It's not gonna work long term. What we're saying is it has to be both. Yes, we want certain quality end users, but in an environment that is more unique and creative and that's going to last and not going to be this traditional. And I know that's difficult, right?
No, I get it.
Throw out
Within the
these-
context of that developer's controlled site of what they own, absolutely agree with that. And I think Mary's very good at that. Now, she's very good at helping developers recognize a vision of connectivity and quality within that development. The part that's difficult that you're asking us to do is then how do we then take say, okay, you developer, you're coming here, but now outside of what you control, what you own, what you have responsibility for, you're going to now hold that development up, and how do we then, what role do we play in connecting it with other experiences in that neighborhood? That's the challenge, because then I think a developer is going to be hesitant to say, well, you want me to spend money going somewhere else or connecting to something else. And then if it's the city, then it's a budget issue, right? How much more are we going to allocate, and where do we prioritize throughout the city the opportunity to increase and create connectivity? We've done that in downtown, right? We've spent millions of dollars in downtown trying to create that place and attraction. We've created placemaking in downtown. We have spent more money per square foot in downtown than anywhere else in the city.
I think we identified them. I think they did. It's these 8 areas.
I will tell you,
Right.
downtown was an overnight success, as he said. It took 20 years. So this idea that we had a master plan 20 years ago, no. We didn't know that Mix Center was going to come. We didn't have a Civic Center Plaza. We didn't have an art center. So you have to have a vision of values, but we didn't have a plan 20 years ago that said all these things were going to happen. It didn't happen that way.
We've been investing to create a place and reviving downtown, and we've made those investments, and the retail as well. A lot of the retail isn't.
Yeah, but I will say this, though, Councilmember, in all due respect, our downtown severely underperforms. For the amount of funding that we've put in here, we have underperformed. The downtown continues to underperform. We've got to figure out what's the better formula. The way it's going today is underperforming. I think that bringing the residential into downtown is going to help, but for downtown, we underperform. And we've got to figure out a way to change that around.
And part of our problem is a property owner that owns a majority of the spaces, and they are not investing in opening those spaces, and is the biggest hindrance. And it's the complaint of the community that they want more places. And when you open a new place, it's well attended. So we're at maybe a halfway point. I don't think we'll really realize, you know, the full benefit of downtown, but it is an area that was vacant and nothing for at least 40 years. So it does take a lot of investment, and a lot of it was the utilities that hadn't been touched because no one was living here, no one was doing anything. Why did we need to do? But yeah, we're making those investments, and it's, you know, I appreciate that. And I think it is giving us a sense of what Mesa is and what Mesa will. Are we there yet? No. And that's the thing with investments, right? We make the investment and then it comes in later years. Will an incentive provide what we need, or do we take that money and make investments into provide place? I don't know. But among your stakeholder feedback, not one of them said, well, we don't get incentives and the other places do. They said, you don't have the density, you don't have the walkability, you don't have, it's not desirable. These kinds of things. So is that enough just to offer an incentive? I don't know about it. I'm opposed to incentives.
I'm gonna, Mr. Heredia has his hand up. Vice Mayor?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great discussion. I think my comments, it's folded into the conversation that we're having. I think on open acre lots that we have the ability to create this opportunities like the Fiesta and the other ones in my district. I think it's a bit easier conversation, but I'm just curious on this intelligence and information on the already established areas like our downtown, and you know, I look at Asian District and in my district Riverview, how we're using this data to inform those developers or those owners to really look at, you know, maybe a different strategy or how we connect these pieces of placemaking. I think it's going to be the next steps that we really have to focus on, to what Councilmember Goforth is mentioning and Councilmember Duff. How do we wrap around these efforts that we're having around, you know, our discussion on placemaking a couple weeks ago, you know, the small lot zoning, all these are connected, I believe, in how we can identify these areas and really heighten the opportunities for really good retail, right, that can come in, and using this analysis and intelligence to really ratchet up that attention, because as you preface in the presentation, a lot of people don't know the Mesa that we're moving into, right? Over the last 15 years, these the council and the staff that we've had are moving into the Mesa of the future, and so it's really having this type of data to really leverage those opportunities in both the redevelopment pieces and also the opportunities as far as these large acres that we have, right? So that's just my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, anything you'd like to add?
I'm here. I was just going to say, I think we need a strategic planning session coming up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll just weigh in at the close here if there's nobody else wants to say anything. I think obviously this past election season, in interacting with folks, it's become apparent that people in Mesa are wanting more high quality retail. And that's what our council is hearing through interacting with their constituents. And I think traditionally the problem that I see is the city is not a retail developer. Our role is to plan property, and I think I do see the tools that we have being maybe more proactively used to maybe more aggressively attract these businesses. But I think I'm aware of several projects that are on the cusp of dropping along the kind of post-pandemic before the next month is over, we'll have a very large zoning case related to the Fiesta Mall redevelopment, which is going to be a massive and significant retail redevelopment in West Mesa. The projects at Gateway East and the Arizona Athletic Ground and all along the Ellsworth Road corridor, north and south of the freeway, are including Gallery Park and many other things. I think a year or two from now, we're going to look back and feel better about this situation than we do right now, because, like I say, there's a lot that's close to happening. But again, that's not to downplay the frustration that I know we're hearing from our constituents who say I have to drive to a neighboring community to find entertainment or the restaurants that I want. So that's very real. But I would just, again, let people know that there's several projects that are on the cusp of happening, not everywhere, but it's at some pretty prominent locations. So, yes.
Were we done with your comment?
I wasn't.
Yeah, keep going then.
Okay. So I would. I'm looking forward to reading and watching. I don't see myself playing a role in the next, whatever it is before my wheelchair arrives. But I do want to offer some optimism that I see a lot of projects that are very close to happening. I do see we're going to continue to be challenged by a lot of these. We want high-end retail, but we don't necessarily have high incomes in Mesa. And at some point, we've got to come to the realization that a lot of those, that we're going to have trouble competing for some of those kind of more exclusive establishments. But I just want to offer some optimism that that I'm aware of several great projects that are on the cusp of happening. I'm very proud of our downtown. I love the unique and local atmosphere. There is, as I walk downtown, there's still some disappointing dark spots in between the highlights that we've got. But when our new city hall opens in another couple of weeks, that's I think I see a lot of positive things. The Melody on Main Street, we've got a lot of empty retail there that hopefully will be able to attract some entertainment and retail there. And with the Chicanos por la Causa project coming online in downtown, again, we're adding hundreds, actually thousands of housing units along Main Street, but also along the Asian corridor. There's two big housing projects right there. And with the passage of 479 and the possibility to bring a streetcar along that corridor, I think that's going to be an extremely vibrant and exciting urban place to live with mixed use, incorporating retail and restaurants and housing. So I get the frustration. I see it in our council. I see it in the folks that are creating the frustration in our council. But I would just my observation is that there's some real significant activity on all of these areas that's just about to drop. Julie.
Sorry, and I just wanted to acknowledge, Jay, how long have you been the Economic Development Director?
1 year.
1 year, okay. So I think prior to you, there was a little bit of pushback on this, and you've heard very loud and clear. And so it's helpful for me to remember that you've been doing this for a year and you've jumped on this. And I wanted to thank you and your team for doing this. You're listening to us. And so I do kind of feel like, shoulda, coulda, woulda in the past, but we're doing it now. And so we've got to be patient with the process. You're trying to figure this out. But thank you for doing something about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
We can now move to the fairly mundane and not particularly interesting topic of raising our utility rates. Why don't we take a 5-minute break just to get our wits about us before we tackle that, and reconvene, like I say, 5 or 10 minutes from now. Next, we've got a couple of big items actually still to go on this agenda. So next is item 1C is a presentation on the utility fund recommended rates, forecast assistance programs, and the city homeowner comparison. Gentlemen?
Good morning, Mayor. Brian Ritchell, the Office of Management and Budget Director. Along with me is Chris Olvey. He is one of the Deputy Directors in the Office of Management and Budget. So this presentation has been previously sent out, but what it really is going to do is answer some of the questions that have been coming throughout the notice of intent time period. Just as a reminder, the notice of intent was approved by council in September, and it's a 60-day notice. And so what this presentation really is going to do is kind of answer some of those questions. We'll go through it fairly quickly, but if you have any questions, please feel free to stop us along the way.
All right. So just as a reminder, the utility operations, each utility is operated as a separate business center. However, we do look at the fund as a whole. And the reserve balance that we have is a safety net for unforeseen expenses, as well as it allows the city to smooth rate adjustments from year to year. And these are the 5 financial principles that we look at when we consider the utility fund forecast, looking at balancing the net source and uses, 20% or higher fund balance, rate adjustments that are predictable and smooth throughout the forecast, looking at residential and non-residential rates and the equity between the two, as well as affordability. So next, we'll present an overview of the homeowner comparison. So this is an analytical tool that compares cost as a whole for the homeowner between comparable cities. So just kind of working through the elements here, we include primary and secondary property tax. So this is based on Mesa's fiscal year 24-25 limited property value, or LPV, and then we apply each city's property tax rates to that amount. We use the LPV because that is how the property tax is assessed, and so it's not the full cash value or market rate of the house. We use the LPV. City sales tax is calculated by applying each city's sales tax rate to the Bureau of Labor Statistics annual consumer expenditure survey. So this is an annual survey that comes out that surveys households in various metro areas. So the Phoenix metro area is included in that. That includes the city of Mesa. And then for the utilities, the solid waste charges are based off of the 90-gallon barrel rate. Water, we look at the Mesa median household usage for a 3/4-inch meter, which is our typical customer. And then wastewater charges, they do vary by city. Some cities just have a flat monthly charge. Some are based on water charges. And so these are all the elements that are included in the comparison. I'll hand it over to Brian to walk through the results.
So on this next slide, here's the comparison, putting all of those factors together, the homeowner comparison. So as you see, the city of Mesa, we're out in the middle, just below the city of Tempe. A couple of things I'd like to note with this in this calculation. As you see at the bottom, it says estimated in April of 2025. So what we've done is we included in this, for instance, are a couple of things that we know that either have been approved by the notice of intent for some of the cities or towns, or that we know that will be going into effect in between January and April. One of those is the increase in sales tax the town of Gilbert just passed of a half percent sales tax. So that is included in here. Also, they, as part of their 3-year plan for water increases, they have a 25% increase. So that is also calculated in here. One of the other ones that we have in here is the city of Phoenix. They've already posted what their future rates may be, with becoming approved in March, and that's just over 11% increase in water. That is also included in here. What Mesa has included is what is proposed as the recommended rates that will be presented to council in November and December. So that's what is included in here. So as you see, as this homeowner comparison, we are still just below, or right in the middle, just below Tempe. And so what we take a look at is kind of 3 different, we have high, medium, and low. The high ones that we look at is, the grouping is Tucson, Glendale, and Gilbert. And then right there in the middle, is Tempe, Mesa, and Phoenix. And then you have the lower ones of Scottsdale and Chandler.
So the next few slides, we're going to review some of the more significant expense pressures on the utility fund compared to last year's forecast. These were presented in the September 12th presentation where departments provided more detail, but I'll just kind of highlight some of the larger adjustments. So This shows the water utility debt service increasing above what we had in the forecast last year. So we now have the AMI project, Central Mesa Reuse Pipeline project, and the Signal Butte Water Treatment Plant expansion. Those are all under contract now, so we know what those project costs are going to be. And then as the department discussed, for other projects, we've seen general increases in labor, concrete, materials, and equipment. And that inflation has put pressure on project costs, which results in increased debt service. Wastewater, the impact is less than it is on the water side. However, wastewater projects still deal with the labor, concrete, materials, and equipment pressures that we're seeing on the water side. And then moving to the operating costs, so just a few to point out. On the water utility, there's a $1.2 million increase over last year's forecast for the Val Vista Water Treatment Plant operating costs. So this is a joint venture that the city is involved in with the City of Phoenix. So the City of Phoenix operates this plant, and we make payments towards the operations and maintenance of that plant. And they've experienced similar cost pressures that we've seen on our water treatment plants, including chemical cost increases, power costs, labor, and other items. A $1.1 million ongoing increase for the water commodity costs. So this is mostly due to the Central Arizona project rates. So whenever the CAP rates come out, the department looks at their anticipated orders, if there's any rate adjustments, and we update our forecast accordingly. On the solid waste side, there's a $3 million ongoing increase in landfill charges. So that contract is up for renewal this year. And based on the rates that we're seeing in surrounding municipalities, we anticipate that there will be a $3 million increase there. And then $3 million also for the solid waste fleet maintenance charges. So this is due to the rising cost of parts, labor, third-party work if a truck needs to be sent out to an outside shop for specialized work. And this is all needed to operate the trucks of that fleet.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of that,
Mayor.
yeah, part of that increase is still related to trying to get supplies from of new vehicles, right? So there's been a delay. So the fleet is aging.
Oh, that's right.
And that's more expensive to maintain.
Correct.
And how are we doing on getting those? I know we put in a lot of orders for new vehicles. How are we doing?
The council's taken that action, so they're coming. And then we've been renting some also, so.
Right, and we approved a rental for some vehicles 2 weeks ago or last week, just recently, to try to bring those costs down a little bit. But we're incurring a cost, but at least it's cheaper than trying to maintain a vehicle that's fallen apart.
Yeah, and Mayor and Councilmember Summers, we review these fleet costs every year in our forecast. So we look at how they're trending, and so as these new vehicles come in and we retire some of those older vehicles that require a lot of care, we're gonna look at our forecasts and see what adjustments need to be made.
Okay.
And then quickly, Mayor and Council, we really wanted to highlight what's happening in Mesa right now. We are in this significant construction mode. And the challenge is, and you're seeing some of our neighboring cities, is how do you allocate that cost for those large capital projects? And it's not necessarily the least expensive option, but we believe it's generationally equitable that we try to spread that cost throughout the life of that asset, of that construction of that facility. And so, I don't know, did you have the number of the total value of construction activity we have going on right now? Do we know what that number is? It's hundreds of millions, right, Chris?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
Yeah.
It's hard
So
to-
we're actively, whereas some of the communities, especially those at the bottom of those homeowners, have very little major capital projects. Those will come for them at some point, obviously. But we are in this mode of expanding treatment plants, constructing significant pipelines to bring in new resources of water. So we're kind of in this very active capital expenditure, and of course that comes with a lot of cost pressures. But we do believe that what we're doing now, generationally for Mesa, is going to set itself up for the long term in a very good way to allow it to both have a lower cost of operations as well as meeting future, demands in the future. But and so then you see that dynamic because other communities are now struggling with, well, how are they going to pay for that? as they take on big projects. And you saw some of our neighboring cities have jumped ahead of us. Well, part of what that's happening is they're having to deal with new large capital projects and how they choose to fund it. Are they choosing to fund it with more generational equity financing, or are they trying to pay for it all in more cash, here and now financing? And that's going to have a significant impact on their rates in the near future.
So next, I'll move to a breakdown of water usage and customers by our residential tiers. So on the left-hand side of the table, we have our residential tiers from tier 0 through tier 4. So tier 0 is going to be our small customers, and that 0 to 3,000 gallons or KGAL is all included in the service charge. Tier 1 is 4 through 6 KGAL, and 6,000 gallons is going to be our median or typical usage customer. So we took basically the summer and the winter months. So in the winter months, this is data from January of this year. So you can see nearly 2/3 of our customers fall either within the tier 0 or the tier 1 categories, and tier 3 and tier 4 is less than 8% of total usage. However, when we move into the summer, we still see that a little less than half of customers fall within tier 0 and tier 1. However, you can see increases in tier 3 and tier 4. And this is due to outdoor use that pushes customers into higher tiers during those summer months. So there were a couple of questions at the last council meeting, and so this is just a breakdown of those behavior patterns.
I think so most of that's going to be, do you think that's pools or is it more landscaping?
It could be either one.
Combination.
Yeah, probably a lot of.
I would think a pool would probably be using
Could be,
a bit
but
more water.
landscaping is going to, especially if it's really hot and you're trying to keep your grass green. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, just as a personal experience, when my wife and I moved, we moved from Superstition Springs down to Eastmark. We ended up with a bigger house, but a smaller yard, and we didn't have a pool. So we are actually, typically in the winter, we'll be in a tier 0 because we don't use it. Also, kicking the kids out of the house was really
That's probably the first.
They have their own houses. But in the summer, we'll maybe inch up to 4,000 gallons in the tier 1 simply because we need to water the landscape a little bit more, even though we've done the xeriscape. We have the artificial grass, which the dog, when we had him, didn't mind. So we've done a lot of things at our own home to make sure that we use less water, and there's some incentives, and hopefully you'll talk about that in a little bit, about how we can reduce it.
So this slide shows the recommended rate adjustments for those small and typical usage customers. So this combines the water, wastewater, and solid waste utilities. So these are the 3 utilities that have the citywide service area. So for the small customer, on the water side, we're looking at about 3,000 gallons, and all that's included in the service charge. So for that type of customer, their current bill is about $85.76. With the recommended adjustments, it would be $90.45 with an increase of $4.69 per month. And then for the typical customer, their current bill is $100.21. With the recommended adjustments, that would increase to $105.81, which would be a monthly change of $5.60. And with that, I'll pass it back to Brian to talk about the utility fund contribution.
So yeah, some of the questions that have been coming up is about the utility fund contribution, and I just wanted to kind of give another overview of that. As just a reminder, back in the mid-1940s, the city went away from a primary property tax, and council at that time wanted to do a contribution from the utility fund to the general fund to support services. So in March of 2020, council adopted ordinance 5559, and what that did is it solidified how the contribution would be used in the general fund. So 30% of operating revenues would be transferred over to the general fund. 25% is dedicated to public safety, so police, fire, and municipal court. And then 5% would be designated for general fund support services. So, but still, there's police support services, fire, municipal court, but also parks, libraries, and other services for the city. So with that, what I wanted to present here is a little more detail of the general fund, of the contribution, the utility fund contribution. So the 25% contribution breaks down as follows: police, fire, and municipal court. And for fiscal year 24-25, the total amount is about 136 million. So how that breaks down is 113 million would be dedicated for public safety, and then the 5% would be 22.7 million, and that would be for the general fund support services for the city. And going a little deeper into that, so how that, just for illustration purposes only, if you see the 85.1 million, that ties back to the previous page. So taking the 25% of 76 million portion for police, how we allocated it out was we took a percentage of their budget. Usually it's about 60-40 or 60-35 and 5 for police, fire, and municipal court. What this wanted to represent was the total amount of the contribution. Up top is the revenue coming in from the utility fund. And for illustration purposes, what that would typically fund for the police itself, that 25 and 5. So it would help fund a police dispatch and 911 center, their fleet costs in fuel, which is about 9.7 million. But then also what we took was say, okay, how many police officers would this help out also? So what this funded was about 336 police officers. So with that allocation, this is what it would, for illustration purposes of what that public safety would be for the police side.
What's the staffing, crew staffing for PD?
For sworn?
Sworn.
What is it,
800 and 850?
I thought I saw the chief here. Chief?
We're 875.
875. And then this funds how many officers?
336. Well, it's just, yeah, it's after you take out all of that. I mean, if you took the whole amount, the 85 million, it would be more. But we're just trying to give you a sense of the magnitude of what it, you know, for illustration purposes, what it could fund or what it could be associated with. And we could take it all the 85 million and say that's how many police officers. We didn't do that, but we're just trying to give a sense. This is a significant contribution to public safety, and here's the kinds of things that would be able to support.
No, I agree with that, and it's, my illustration just trying to tie into that a little bit the same way, just using personnel.
Sure. We could give you the number, how many police officers are supported by 85 million, but.
Sufficient to say it's a lot. It's a considerable contribution to
It's,
our
well,
public safety.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then what we broke down on the fire side was 36.7 million would be allocated for fire, and how that, for illustration purposes, how that, those funding would support the support services, which would be a fire dispatch, the fleet, to help support the fleet and the fuel, but then also in-house medical school that we just, that council just approved. But then also what we did is we took the position costs for 12 fire stations. And so the funding that comes over from the utility would, for illustration purposes, help fund 12 fire stations.
And all those other things.
And all of the personnel.
So the point is, these contributions to utility funds, in lieu of having a primary property tax, are significant. They fund a significant part of the public safety operations.
So I brought this up last week, but there's this video that City Mesa did that I think is excellent, and I saw that it maybe came to maybe a homepage or something that's
Yeah.
more
And
easily
it's
accessible.
And it's played right before your council meetings now.
Yeah, oh, great. So I'm hoping people will watch that and recognize, like, we're in the top 50 biggest cities in the nation. We're the only one out of all 50 of those that don't have a primary property tax. Like, it's a big deal that we don't have a primary property tax, and I just don't think people realize it when we're having these discussions. So I really love that video. Encourage everyone to watch it to understand why we're doing this. Is this true of other cities that don't have a primary property tax, that they're doing something similar, or what do they do to make up for not having a primary property tax?
Yeah, it depends on the city. Sometimes they'll have it in a utility bill as a fee, and some other cities just don't do it. And so it all depends on the city, but it's kind of hard to go through each utility bill, because they will put it in the bill, but it may be a subsection of a portion as a fee.
Okay, so because we have been doing this finance model for so many years, this is how we have been able to make up for those deficits for specifically public safety.
Well, it's just in 1940, that's
Yes.
exactly what they did, right?
Yes.
I mean, what we did in, what'd you say, it was 2020?
2020.
Yeah,
In
put a
2020,
limit
we
on
just
it. Mhm.
formalized it, and so it didn't feel like it was kind of just a stopgap
Right.
measure. We said, listen, we need to contain the amount, and then we need to be very specific about how it can be used.
Right.
And so we can't change that. I mean, it's established as part of the ordinance, and so those monies go directly to those purposes. And all we wanted to show you is of the 136 million for this year, I mean, what was the total?
113.
113 plus, 20, yeah. So a big portion of that is going to public safety, right?
So, I mean, even we said 25% could go to public safety, but then that extra 5% also, because it's going to general fund and what,
Right.
2/3 or something is our public safety, so that also of that 5%,
Yeah, only
2/3 of it's
$11
going to public
million
safety.
of the 136 is going to something other than public safety.
Right, so just the disinformation that's out there, that we are taking all this money from our utility to go to slush funds or
Yeah.
whatever they're saying.
I've never considered public safety a slush fund.
Right, so, okay, I think that's a really good point. And I just hope that anyone who is part of these conversations, we can, when we're talking to our neighbors and our family members that are mad about their utility bill, or that they've been hearing that Mesa is hiking up the utility rates, and everyone has a lot of fear and panic around that there's actually a lot of data and, I don't know, accurate information to help
And I
with
think
those
if you look-
conversations.
When we used those, we went through those tiers. I mean, it's a 5.5% increase
Mm-hmm.
overall for those typical.
So about $5 a month for a
Yeah, well,
typical,
5%. I mean, if it's 5.5%, considering what you're paying more in gas or food, I don't think 5.5% increase is significantly, it sounds extraordinarily high as far as what is in the world of inflation. And we tried to smooth it out. You're seeing other communities, what was the number, 25% increases? They're talking about 90% increases in some other areas. We just felt like it's just a lot easier to manage that, try to smooth, that's one of our principles, is to smooth these rates out over a long period of time.
so when we vote on this, and we're hearing a lot of people are gonna come, are we gonna talk about this again? Are we gonna bring this up? We'll just keep.
No, I think that's one, this is kind of our direct
Yes.
rehearsal with you all. And
Yes.
get your feedback. And
Okay.
then certainly, on the 18th, we can do this again. And we could be glad to do it in front of the community if you'd like. But we're trying to make this available and get the information out.
Because it's so, I mean, it's something that I've loved in my 4 years on council, that you guys have very intentionally just done little tiny small increments so that we don't get hit with a 25% one. Like, it would make some people in the city really happy if we said, okay, we're not gonna raise utility rates, but just means next year we're gonna have to raise them even higher, right? So anyways, I just don't think we can say this enough, and.
No, we'll be glad to do this presentation again. I think we wanted to get this early to you
Okay.
all, so you get your feedback, and then we can change or do whatever we want to do and have that ready again for the 18th.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm going to wait till the next slide.
Keep going.
I just want to say along those lines is that I think it's really a great business model that we have our own utilities and we use it as a way to pay for our services. We have to have the money one way or another to have a certain quality of life. So the choices might be that property tax, or it might be raising our sales tax, but it needs to come from somewhere. Coming from a business is less impact on the average person than if we did these other measures. $5 a month, if we raise our sales tax a half a point, or we did a property tax, it's gonna be more than. To have a business, and as long as our rates are competitive with our competitors, we can use that business model to, it should be, profits, to transfer into supporting our city. But we have found that because of these inflationary pressures on cost and infrastructure and such, that actually that transfer and many of the utility funds has left us negative. That means we are using our reserve funds, money that we had set aside, our saving, our, you know, that 20% that we tried to be at. And in, I think the next slide, we're going, and we'll see how it dips down, and we're getting below that savings amount, which can affect our borrowing in bonds and such like that. We had to be very sensitive about it. But if we want to be fiscally responsible and have that 20%, it is not fiscally responsible to keep on going
everyone.
in
I'm
debt
Chair Wagner, and I'm
in order
calling the study
to.
session to order at 5 o'clock. We'll start with roll call of our
Okay.
board members this evening. I'm Chair Wagner, I'm here. Vice Chair Allen? Here. Board Member Lineham? Here.
upstairs.
Board Member
It's
Reed?
either
Here.
maybe Frankie
Board Member
or,
Glover
No, I think they must be
is
having a meeting
excused.
upstairs.
Board Member Trendler?
Here.
No?
And then Board Member
Someone's
Pereira
playing
is
a-
also excused this evening.
Mesa 11 over here.
The purpose of this
Wait.
study session is to allow the board members and city staff to
Actually,
review
this
the
might be
cases
more
on today's
interesting.
agenda.
Should wait
Although
and see.
staff will present information about the cases and the board may ask staff questions
Like
about
Board
the
of
case.
Adjustment.
The board does not
That was
discuss the
last
merits
night.
of any matter on today's public hearing agenda, take comments about any matter
They're
from
up
the
there, they're up
public,
there,
or make
yeah.
any decision regarding any
Anyway, just
matter.
to sum up.
Please note
and
that all
I'll
of these
be done.
actions for all items
I
on the
think
agenda will occur at the public hearing.
To be
which
fiscally
begins at
responsible,
5:30
we
p.m.
can't
or immediately
overdraw.
following the study session.
I mean, we can't
Whichever occurs
go
later.
negative.
Right.
We have to
Before
have a
we
business
go
model
on
in which
to the
we're
items on
softening
our
that
agenda.
blow. Anytime you're taking money out of your savings and stuff like that, you have to stop it in some way. You have to soften it, and that is the moderate increase that we have taken most every year. I don't know, for however many years since I've been on council, we've done these 3 to 5%, because we know 3 to 5%, I just have to adjust our budget for the extra $5, whatever like that. We can do this because we don't want to be like some other cities have had to. They avoid it, even utility companies avoid it, and then all of a sudden it's 25%, 50% increases. It's just, that's detrimental to a person's budget. So I think it's a smart business model, so thanks.
And so with that, we'll get into kind of what Councilmember Summers was indicating, that some of the utility assistance programs that the city does offer to help soften that blow.
Yeah, so first is the limited income senior rate program. So right now, we have just over 900 customers on that rate, and that's a 30% discount on the water service charge. So with the recommended rates, that 30% discount is equal to $9.65 per month. So that would be about $115 per year in assistance for those customers. There's also a summer electric assistance program. So this past summer, we had approximately 260 customers on that. So this is an income qualified program for city electric customers. So it's just the downtown and surrounding city electric utility that eliminates the electric service charge during the peak summer months of June, July, and August. So with the recommendations, that service charge is $19.50. So in those summer months, that would be about a $60 savings. We also have the Mesa Community Action Network, where there's $200,000 in annual direct city support for specifically for utility assistance, so residents can apply through Mesa Can and become eligible for some of that funding. And then just a reminder on this last bullet, we completed $20 million in electric utility assistance from ARPA funding. So that was provided to both residential and commercial customers. That began in November 2021 and ran through October 23 when the funds were fully expended.
And Mayor Council, you may recall, we had some individuals show up 2 weeks ago, maybe, suggesting that there wasn't any, there'd been run out of money for Mesa Can. That wasn't, and I kind of suggested that wasn't the case. It's not the case. It's that, I think as we've done our research and following what Mesa Can, is that they do have eligibility requirements. They have criteria of what's eligible and opportunities for individuals to receive assistance, but there are limitations within that. And so unless you qualify for that help, there isn't money available for that. So, but as far as the program that we've been funding for several years with Mesa Can, and we've increased that over the years, there was over 120,000, Mike, or something like that dollars still remaining in that account. And we've always been open when, if they start running out of money, something extraordinary has happened, Mike Hughes never hesitates to call and say, hey, can you help? Might need to increase this. So we're working with Mesa Can, but they are the ones that manage that program, and they're bringing in, it's not just our dollars, but you get dollars from the state and federal, and so they have a program that you have to go through, and you have to comply with their eligibility requirements in order to receive the funding. So it's not a lack of funding. It seems to me it was more of being able to meet the eligibility requirements through Mesa Can, is what I understood.
So that's a needs-based, income-based program, and so what the folks said when they came in is they walk into Mesa Can, there's a sign up on the door saying, sorry, we're out of money.
Yeah.
That's not an accurate reflection.
Not our money. We still have a significant amount of dollars that are still available to be drawn down at that.
Right.
Them.
Okay, I know that there's
Well,
lots of questions.
just, I'm on the Mesa Can board, so I'm in a lot of these conversations and discussions. To me, it seems like there's maybe an issue with the accessibility of
Access?
accessing the program, just because their hotline's only open for an hour on this day of the week or whatever, right?
Okay.
And so, and then you might have to be on hold for 2 hours and not get through, because they're only able to help so many people.
Okay.
Each, actually, I think it's now a monthly hotline. And so I guess the point there is that they might have the money, but it's probably not super accessible.
Okay.
And also, I think a lot of people wait till like they get the notice that they're gonna get shut off next week, right? So at that point, it probably is a little bit too late to access that help if you're gonna call, maybe sit on hold for 2 hours and not get through. So I do think when people are saying like, I can't get help from Mesa Can, it's true, they can't, because they're calling and they're not getting through. They're not the 15 people they were able to help in that month or whatever, right? Like, so I don't think it's just, I think if they were to go through that 200,000, they could probably go through that in a few months. Like, but that's not their model. They're trying to slowly work through and help people so that they can make sure all those eligibility requirements are fulfilled and everything, right? So I do think there's maybe an issue there. You know, I've talked to them to see like, well, do we need more people? Do we need more hours? They've been doing this for years and years. They know how it works, and it's just finding, I mean, because there are people who legitimately have the need, and there are people that are trying to abuse the system, and making those judgment calls is really, really hard.
That's interesting, because I remember years ago, we helped pay for a new phone system over there.
Well, yeah, and so that's why I don't think
Thinking.
I don't think it's the phones, I don't think it's the employees, I think it's just a matter of the system that they have in
You have
order
to go
to help.
through, yes, I think that's
Yes.
true. I think there's a process you have to follow.
So, and the other thing,
yeah.
the other thing I just wanted to maybe bring up that lady mentioned is that I'm still a little unclear on is whether there's a payment plan through the city of Mesa.
Yes.
Because that was a little bit fuzzy on whether there is and whether it's offered to everyone and.
Yeah, and it's the dilemma, and I think after me, I had the conversations, is what's unfortunate is individuals knowing that during the summer, there's a we don't
Yes.
turn off.
So they
just
wait.
don't make any payment.
Absolutely.
And then when you get to this time of the year, we're saying, okay, now you gotta pay.
And
Now
they're
it's this
5
big
months
balloon
behind,
payment, and
yeah.
and so we're working to establish that we do need to have a payment plan, but it can't carry over into the next hot season, if that makes sense.
So
where I just keep
are we
thinking-
looking at that, like some
Absolutely.
policies?
We suggested that, hey, we don't have to create a new wheel here. I mean, APS and SRP do this all the time, so we're going to research and see how they go through that. And in fairness, we want to make, because I think we were carrying about $5 million in back payments at some point. Does that sound right? So we want to be, we have to kind of we're trying to manage that. We're trying to be fair, but we're going to see how the other utilities are doing it. We will work on payment plans, that's obvious.
Okay.
But it also means, though, you still have to get caught up.
So it was suggested that maybe we have a policy that they have to pay something every month, or, I mean, just, so that's the
Yeah.
kind of stuff I would
It
like
just-
you guys to look at
We
and
will
bring
look at
back
that.
to us.
But the leverage is if you don't pay in July, so you don't even pay the minimum, are we going to cut them off? So the policy's been no.
Right.
So but we want to, we don't discourage, we want people to keep paying something during that time. So let us come
Okay,
back with you on
okay.
that. But
I
yeah,
just think there's some fuzziness there that we could work on.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I think it wouldn't be perhaps a bad idea for maybe the 18th, maybe the study session before the 18th, to get someone from Mesa Can and our utility department come in and say, here's the status of this. Here's how we're administering the $200,000 you give us every year for this
All right.
assistance program. 'Cause
Yeah, on our side, yes, we can do that. Okay.
So the next slide, you've seen this before. However, we've broken it down a little bit differently. Just wanted to kind of show the utility fund forecast. What this does is section out the sources. Usually you just see each utility and their net sources and uses combined. Here we wanted to show the overall fund, the sources up top, and then the uses of funding in the next section, and wanted to highlight, kind of show you the operating expenses on how we've been talking about the rise of cost of commodities, of construction, things like that, of operating going up, but then also the third one down, the debt service, going from 113 in fiscal year 23-24 to an estimated 181 million in 29-30, and that is due to mostly due to the three big projects that we mentioned, the AMI, the Mesa Reuse Pipeline, and then also the Signal Butte. But however, to get back to Councilmember Duff's kind of point is, we do see us going negative, however, in the outer, drawing down that fund balance, but in the outer forecast, you see, even though we're incrementally raising the rates and trying to keep it steady and smooth, we're still able to come back to a positive net sources and uses, being able to do that, even though we are putting a big investment into our infrastructure. So at the end, we get back to, we're still in between what our financial policy is, in between 8 and 10%. Would we like to be higher? That would be great. However, we still want to be an affordable utility and take into consideration all of the other things.
We'll have to work on those out years, and when we get there, we'll have to get those back up.
Did I hear you correctly?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Did I hear you correctly, 8 to 10% or 20%
So-
reserve?
So our financial policy that is approved by council is 8 to 10%. Our principles that we like to follow is between 15 and 20%.
When we're doing forecasting, we try to get it at 20.
We try to get it to 20%.
So this is obviously a very, very busy slide. There's a lot of information there, but really, for me, the takeaway is that, yes, we are proposing increasing rates, but the rate that we're proposing, the increase is less than the amount of our increased costs.
Yep.
And we're proposing doing that over the next several years.
Yeah, even in the fiscal year in which the rates will go into effect, 25, 26, we're still going to have a net loss of almost $23 million.
Right. So I think that's a point that needs to not get lost in this conversation, is that out of necessity, we were living in a very inflationary time with regard to the chemicals and all the details that have been explained, but that we're not proposing to keep it static in terms of the amount of money that we make in comparison to previous years. We're making less and less and spending down our reserves more and more in order to buffer the ratepayers.
Obviously, we need to keep an eye on that. I support the concept of smoothing these rate adjustments using the bucket of money that is the reserve fund. It's kind of what it's there for in a way. But it's getting a little nervy as we push out 4, 5, 6 years, and I know the city manager's already indicated that you're going to be looking at that. But what I don't want this to turn into down the road is all of a sudden we have to sharply increase, like some of our other communities have done, in order to put that reserve back. So this is some discretionary time to fix that issue, but this is the one thing that gives me a little bit of heartburn. My fellow council members have mentioned a couple things about using the utility transfer, and I know it's really, it's been controversial for dang near 100 years, right? And the community has discussed changing it at least 3 times, gone to the voters. And the one thing that people hate more than the utility transfer is a primary property tax. The previous slide talks about some of the things that we're doing to protect our most vulnerable populations, those who just don't have a lot of income. But I want folks to consider is if an alternative was to implement a primary property tax, there's issues with that because there are people who are income poor but property rich. Retirees largely are among that group who, they bought a nice home. We've seen, as much as we've seen inflation over the past few years,
We've also seen a huge increase in the value of our property, right? So without necessarily that increase in how much people make. So we would be negatively impacting potentially a lot of the retirees who live in our community by instituting property taxes like that. And that's probably why the city has rejected it. The other thing we do that happened back in 2000 to protect folks who don't have as much income is we eliminated the sales tax on food. So every other community, save maybe one, has a property tax on food. I think Phoenix didn't.
Phoenix doesn't.
Doesn't. And I thought they implemented a temporary one.
For their food tax?
But generally speaking, they don't have one. But that, we're one of 2, maybe 3 cities in the valley that doesn't tax food for consumption at home, right? You go to some of our favorite drive-thrus, then you're gonna pay a little tax. But if you purchase the food at home and it's for consumption at home and you're preparing it at home, you don't pay that tax. And I think that's the right thing to do. I think we as a voters, as difficult as that is financially on the city, it was the right thing to do for the community, for protecting the more vulnerable.
The video talks about that too.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I probably should watch it.
It's a great video.
Probably about $40 million or more a year, I would suspect.
Yeah. Something that I would like to see, one more point too, I'm going to back up slightly because Councilmember Duff mentioned this. When you look at the maps for our utilities, we're not all serviced by the same utilities within Mesa. So for example, Superstition Springs, where I used to live, is serviced by Mesa Gas. And I moved out of Mesa Gas to Southwest Gas, and my gas prices are much higher. And Southwest Gas, bless their hearts, has raised their rates considerably the past couple of years, to the point where their residential rates are more for me than it is for those who live in the Mesa Gas area. But here's the thing, that money goes to corporate profits. That's just how it works. If you own stock in Southwest Gas, you're gonna get a share of that money. That's fine. But in our model, it's still a profit model, but it goes back into public safety. And some of the concern has been that that's maybe using this transfer isn't, people don't know where their money goes. But when the council fixed it to 30%, 25% to public safety, 5% to general funds, that added a lot to allow people to know what their money is going to. And we didn't have that for a very long time. So there are things that the staff has done to protect ratepayers. I think we should probably hear a little bit more about that. And what I'm thinking about is, well, for one, this council originally for the water rates, I think the recommendation was 5.5, and we went down to 4. So that's something I think we need to bring up and why we did that. And I think Mr. Freeman was the one that brought up that idea. We've also started to shift the cost more to the large users, right? So there's been questions about how does the large industrial development in our community impact the costs? Because up until not too long ago, the cost generally rose at the same percentage, if not directly at the same percentage. But now staff has started to look at how much is a residential user really impacting the cost to the system in the pipes and the fire hydrants and the use, and adjusting rates based on that. And large water users are paying a lot more, as they should, because they put more of a demand on that system. So this is how we protect our ratepayers, right? So we started to tier. You get, for those who can, who maybe are less well off than the rest, you're more than likely to fall into that 3,000 gallons of water. If you live in an apartment, for example, you don't have a big pool, you don't have landscaping, you get 3,000 gallons of water included in the base rate bill. I think that's also how we reduce costs. And then the larger your lot, you have a big pool and a lazy river and acres of grass and lots of water-thirsty palm trees, you're gonna pay more based on where you are in that consumption, but we still also have the opportunity for the Zeroscape. I didn't see that in here either. We could probably talk a little bit about that. As if I wanted to reduce my rate, how would I do that? So I think there's some things we should probably talk about in the meeting, because it is a public meeting. It's for folks to come in and express their concerns about the rates and what's fair, but also an opportunity to learn, and for the staff to say, this is why it's important. We've heard the inflationary. This is how we're trying to protect ratepayers, and this is how we're trying to keep these as reasonable as possible, because let's face it, the inflation of the past 4 years is just crushing. I mean, I keep bringing up it's $3 for a dozen eggs, and I thought that was insane. And people came up to me and go, where are you buying eggs for $3 a dozen? Because, you know, I would like to go there. But it used to be 99 cents. So there's a lot of sensitivity in the costs here. It's impacting us. This is a vital service. So if we could include that in the conversation that we're going to have here in a week or so, that'd be great.
I'd like to also make an additional point that on our debt service, those are investments primarily into our water system, whether it be our wastewater treatment plant, the investment that we're making with Phoenix for treating water, the central reuse pipeline. And yes, this is expensive. It's very expensive to do this, but we know our water future is going to be increasingly more difficult and more restrictive and more expensive. These investments that we're making today is going to make our rates, our availability of water much more efficient and much softer than having to buy raw water. I remember the cost of raw water, but those percentages have gone through the roof just this past year. And in subsequent years and in our future, this is our reality. By making these investments that we're doing our reuse pipeline and our treatment and investments and with Phoenix and stuff like that, we are taking care of trying to avoid buying raw water without having to trade it with our Indian community, all the agreements we have in place. These investments will pay off in the long term. It's hard to absorb them now. It's hard to see them on the spreadsheet. But for our future, it's absolutely necessary, and it will pay off. It will definitely pay off in our future.
And we are expecting significant cuts to Colorado River water here in the next few years. The CAP covers all of my district. That's where that water comes from. So we have to invest. In addition, we also have to remember that there are increasing federal and state mandates on everything from water quality to treatment and levels of things like arsenic that are meant to protect public health, but they come at a cost. So we can maybe talk a little bit about that too as part of the cost pressures. I mean, we don't have to overdo it, but the mayor's tired.
Mayor is tired. Couple of, I think, good observations here. We would, I'd love to see a screen in this presentation that we're going to give, the next couple of meetings that makes the point that the proposed increases are less than the amount of the projected costs. And to Jen's point, I'd love to see just one screen that shortly describes those 3 capital projects and their significance and their costs. I mean, we don't want to recreate that.
No, but
I think that's a great reminder of again, why we're, what makes us unique compared to some of the other
And
cities.
that we did lower the rate from what was initially proposed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think those are both that'll mitigate people's reaction to a rate increase.
I think that point is, and I was going to make that as well, that this is really planning for the future. Mm-hmm. And it's not a lack of, well, I guess running it leanly and an efficiency issue. I think when people think, if your costs are going up, what are the cost-cutting measures that you're going to take to run more efficiently? This isn't that situation, right? Our operating costs are pretty efficient. And so this is really long-term planning for the future. So I think that's an important point, because those questions I have gotten of where's the cost cutting coming from? What are we going to do to lower our costs?
Yeah, we're spending money to save money. With the reuse pipeline and whatnot. I think when you explain the math of the reuse pipeline, you go, wait a minute, you're spending how much to do this? And then you say, well, wait a minute, after just a few short years, you'll more than, we're making money by doing this. That we need to just concisely remind people of that.
So with that, with the calendar, the rest of the calendar is, as mentioned, November 8th will be the introduction to the utility rate ordinances. And then on December 2nd, the first council meeting back in the new council chambers will be the city council take action on the utility rates.
Great.
And then they will go into effect February 1st.
All right. Thank
So
you.
Mayor and council, we'll prepare all this. It will happen on the 18th when we do the introduction. So we'll be prepared to present it on the introduction, because you're not meeting on the 14th. You're not here. So we'll bring it, we'll get it out to you, but I think what we would assume, maybe what you're asking us is, we certainly could do it in this study session on that Monday afternoon before the 18th, but maybe we present it upstairs ahead of the public hearing, if that's what you, we could anticipate that that's what we'll do with this presentation, with these additional areas you've asked us to highlight.
Present it upstairs.
Upstairs, yeah.
So, Mayor, council, the introduction is on consent. The public hearing would be on the 2nd. So, just want to.
But we can,
we can still do it upstairs.
We could,
At least,
we'll figure it out. I think there's a way for us to take it and have you present it, even if it's on consent. I think we can do that.
I suspect it won't last on consent. I think we're expecting folks to show up. So I think if we do this, a concise version of this on the 18th, and then on the 2nd, we might want to just do it all over again, or we might want to just, people will show up and say, here's my list of grievances, and we say, okay, here's the answers to this and this and this.
Yeah, we'll be prepared to do it both times.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, we're going to christen that new chambers with the bang. Yeah. That's great.
We're going to see if it really holds that many people.
All right, council, moving on. Item 1D is a presentation and update on the city's homelessness strategy, including urban camping and updates to the city park code.
And then Mayor, council, once again, as the group's coming up, the committee, Public Safety Committee has heard this presentation, but the action to amend the code, it will also be on your November 18th agenda, sorry. I'm trying to, these dates that seem so far away. But that's the next Monday that you meet. That'll be on that council meeting. I don't believe that.
The electric bikes.
Oh, the electric bike, that's not on the urban camping side of it. We're not going to talk, we're not going to just, remember we had that conversation, it was all the code changes and parks and urban camping and electric bike. We're not going to have the electric bikes as part of this conversation. We're just going to focus on urban camping. We'll bring those,
Electric bikes at beginning of next year.
yeah, we'll do that.
January, February.
Yeah, we won't, yeah, we'll separate them.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Should we do some calisthenics or yoga?
No, we're ready.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor and council members. I'm Lindsay Belinky from the Community Services Department and the Office of Homeless Solutions. And with me here today, I've got Andrea Moore, Kristen Hooker, Sean Hunt, and Commander Cost. Chief Cost, I'm so sorry. You have not been demoted.
That was some time ago.
I have, yeah, I had it better at 7:30, sorry. So we are here today to give you an update on our homelessness response, particularly related to the urban camping ordinance updates. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm going to start off by giving just a brief legal summary of what is happening. So since 2018, when the Ninth Circuit had the ruling in Martin v. Boise, we have been enforcing urban camping to a degree to the extent that it is in the parks or it is an obstruction of the street. But we are contacting these people on the streets, and we are offering shelters and other resources to them prior to issuing a citation. In June of 2024, the Supreme Court had heard a case called Grants Pass v. Johnson. And in that case, they decided that it is not cruel and unusual punishment to cite with a civil violation or a criminal violation for these urban camping violations. So with that decision, the City of Mesa is no longer required to offer services before issuing a citation or effecting an arrest. However, the City of Mesa is still going to seek to provide services the way that we have been, especially where shelter beds are available. So in terms of policing, from the police perspective, this is really not going to make a huge difference in the way that we are currently enforcing. It's just another tool in the belt for us to be able to enforce this. If shelter beds are not available, we can still issue citations. Currently what we're doing is citing if it seems to be homeless related. We're citing into community court where they are also still being offered those resources and kind of helping them get back on their feet through the court system.
If I can chime in, Mayor, Council, it's good to see everybody this morning. The working relationship we've had with the prosecutor's office from the very beginning on this has really given us a lot of tools on the enforcement side. And so our philosophy from the very beginning with the list of different codes that we can enforce in state law has been robust. And our philosophy on the street with our officers has always been, we're going to offer services, but if you don't accept those services and we have a violation of the law that we've been enforcing and we've been sending to community court, that in combination with the city's services that is offered, through Lindsay and her area, and our collaboration with Parks has really been effective. So when you look at this decision, just understand that we have never shied away from the enforcement component of the issues that we're facing out there with homelessness, but our officers are always offering those services first.
But what this does do, though, it takes away kind of that, I don't know what you call it, the idea that there had to be a bed available, or if there was a bed available, we really couldn't enforce to some degree.
Right.
Right? Now that's off. Now we can enforce regardless of the, how many beds we have available. But for us, this is our practice. It doesn't change dramatically what we do because we kind of lead with services. We're trying to help solve the problem, not establish a chronic. But there are times, I suspect, Chief, right, where we have chronic trespassers or homeless, that this will give us a tool to be maybe more expeditious with that. Is that fair?
Absolutely. It will help because we definitely have folks that will run into, over and over again, and if they refuse services and then there happens not to be a bed available, it just adds to our officers' ability to enforce in those areas, which is beneficial.
So prior to this change, was there a time where we'd encounter someone and we're confronted with the possibility to give a citation and the phone call comes back from the station saying, we don't have any beds, you can't cite them? I mean, have we been in, have we reached that threshold, and has that impact, to your point, has that reduced our options in enforcement, or have we always been able, had a bed, that would justify the issuance of a citation?
Mayor, Council, I think I can only speak anecdotally. I don't have the amount of times that has happened with our officers on the street where they've come into that issue. Early on it was difficult until we streamlined the process of getting the services. I know that was an issue early on, but we're talking years ago now. The way the city has done their business and has offered the services and collaborated, I think has allowed our officers to have that connectivity. And if we can't find a bed, there's so many other options. So I don't know, anecdotally, I can't tell you whether I've heard that our officers said, wow, we have nowhere to put this person, yet we have a violation that we can't enforce for urban camping. But this is important to Mr. Brady's point, to be able to have the ability when that does happen, that our officers can continue on that enforcement path if necessary.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you. So currently, under the Mesa City Code, there are two ways that we can enforce these violations. So the first is going to be under the public park regulations, and that one is an urban camping prohibition. So that's what you're seeing. Our park rangers are able to cite for that. PD, if they're in the parks, are also able to cite in the urban camping parks code. The other way that we've been able to enforce this is under the prohibition against blocking the public right-of-way. Because urban camping, is limited to the parks in the language of camping, we've been using, it's basically obstructing the street, so it's the prohibition against blocking the public right-of-way in order to enforce camping outside of the parks. So what we're proposing is an addition to our current Mesa City Code, and it would be its own ordinance under urban camping. So we are suggesting that we take it in addition to the prohibition against camping in the parks, this urban camping ordinance that can be enforced outside of the parks by PD. So that's the urban camping ordinance that we are proposing would allow police officers to enforce beyond just the blocking the public right-of-way, that we'd be able to, we have urban camping, the definition of camping and camp paraphernalia, and it just gives extra tools beyond the sleeping, lying, sitting language that's currently in Title VI 1-17.
Can you give some examples of maybe outside of a park, in front of businesses where now it may make it easier for an officer to enforce this?
So anywhere in the streets, we're thinking like alleys, parking lots, any city-owned property that they're currently, that would include in front of bus stops and places that would impact potentially public safety.
I know we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jill.
Have we made any headway on the communication lines between police and park rangers that we talked about, I don't know, last year, just so that they can communicate with, like, I just told this guy to move out of this park, and then there's police officers that are on the street that, you know, there was some issues with the communication happening between officers and park rangers. And I was told you guys were gonna work on that. You're all looking at me very confused.
Mayor, council members, Spilsbury, the park rangers are regularly communicating with PD. So they're on their radio channels. There's conversation back and forth when PD needs to engage, when park rangers
I
need
thought
to.
there was like some walls, some access walls that were put up that they didn't have access to the same communication.
They are
This
on
is
the
what I'm
same
remembering.
communication.
So,
The
same
radios are tied
communication.
in with.
It may be just a managerial encouragement to do that. I think from PD and from Andrea's side, I think there's been more, and I know there's more kind of coming together and having those discussions together. So I think it's been built, I think the technology was there, but I think it's just a recognition of working together and having that. And I think there's been a lot of more intentional gathering and coordinating between the two groups, as I understand it. There's been more regular kind of meetings and discussions together about coordinating. That's what I've heard. Is that fair?
Okay, okay.
I don't think it was a technology thing. I think it was just really a recognition that both sides needed to have more discussions with each other. But, and if there was technology, I think they've overcome that. Because I think they're looking at the same iPads and having the same information.
I just remember at one point there was some conversations.
Yeah, there might have
They
been.
didn't
And I
have
think you're,
access to
I'm
those
not.
same channels.
I think you're right. I think we did have that discussion, so.
Okay.
Jen, did you have a question?
Kind of, I'm trying to solve some problems right now, so this is along those lines where people are on the public right-of-way, not in a park, but in the public right-of-way, and appear to be fine, but it's a congregating population there on a daily basis. And then, unless they're using alcohol or drugs, and they can be caught by our bike squad or something like that, it doesn't stop the congregation of it just being groups who are occupying benches and areas and stuff like that, that is almost intimidating for anybody walking by. It's just a collection. Some of them could be homeless. Some of them, we had a conversation yesterday with a couple, and they weren't homeless. It was just off the light rail, and it was just a place where they like to congregate in large numbers with all kinds of garbage and stuff And I don't know, I understand there is no law that you're breaking by sitting in a public area, but to the point that it's a congregate type of situation with a lot of garbage and other things going, and then eventually at night, it'll turn into things that have to be monitored and is a constant problem. I have no idea, other than just remove all the benches, sometimes the retention areas or those walls around the retention. I'm kind of stuck. How do we make sure that we have an inviting, safe, walkable, non-intimidating area for people to access the businesses and the light rail and their homes and such without, what has happened is our heat relief centers closed, we're out of our summer, but there's populations that still gather in the vicinity of it, and I don't know, I don't know what the solutions are.
Can I just interject one thing? Councilmember Duff, the definition of camping does go a long way in defining, it's not just, as Kristen mentioned, sleeping. It's having that location as a living accommodation. So the presence of all of the things that somebody carries along with them could still fall within that definition of using that space for a living space. It doesn't address any type of intimidation like you're talking about if there's a group and people are uncomfortable walking by a group, but if they have the things with them that are the things they're using to live, the camping definition, camp paraphernalia does define all of that together as being present with them and not allowed.
So you don't have to catch them sleeping on the bench, but if they have all their stuff, and I don't know, it's so hard. I don't know what to do about it. Okay.
And if I may, I think
I'm sorry, I think we're still.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, she can go ahead. Thank you. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that this is addressing exactly what your concern is that these congregations of people on the sidewalks or in other public or city-owned spaces, that's sort of what we're trying to address with this urban camping ordinance, because we see these behaviors in the parks and what they can lead to. And while we have that enforcement ability in the parks, we didn't really have a space in our city code under the police regulations that would allow us to enforce those types of behaviors elsewhere. So I think that this ordinance is probably, hopefully, what is going to address the issue that you're having and that you're seeing.
It's a tool instead of just waiting for it to be an illegal activity before we can take any action.
That's right.
Maybe this will help. Okay, thanks.
I've lost track. Did Prop 312 pass?
314.
No,
No,
it's 312. I think it did
So-
pass, Scott, don't you believe it?
Oh,
312 is
Did
going to pass.
312 pass? Yeah. So have we, since we're going to expand our urban camping laws, have we sort of looked, I mean, we don't have primary property tax, but does it affect secondary, do you know, Jim, property tax, where you can apply for a refund from your property taxes?
As if you have to make an investment to be.
Yeah.
Right, to remove loitering and sleeping and stuff like that. If you have to incur those expenses, you can apply for a refund to the
Right.
governing authority, which would be us.
Let me first say on that proposition that, the city of Mesa has always been enforcing its code. So we haven't been engaging in the conduct that gave rise to that proposition.
But we're expanding our code. I guess that's why I bring it up. We're expanding the definition of urban camping, right?
Yeah.
So we're adding to the enforcement.
I'll circle back on that in just a second here. And so I don't feel like we've ever engaged in the conduct that gave rise to that proposition. The way the proposition is written is it's primary property tax.
It is primary.
That is how it is written. So it'll be interesting to see how it's implemented over time. The other aspect is we're expanding the definition of urban camping to what, and I haven't done an exhaustive research, but it's similar to almost every other community. We were the exception. We were the city that had urban camping defined, so it's only in city parks, and you couldn't apply it elsewhere. So we're now just really using this as an opportunity. We talked about the cases, but really we're using those recent cases as a basis to make changes to our code that many other municipalities have had in place for many years. And so the expansion of urban camping is really to create another, just as a definition, is to be like all our surrounding communities, and to give our police force the same sort of tools that other police forces have in other communities. And so you'll see it as two ordinances, and one is the urban camping ordinance, or we think of it as the urban camping ordinance, and it's the one that where the urban camping is going to be applied outside of parks. But we're also changing the parks code to tweak a number of things, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But there's urban camping in that too. That's where it's always resided. So we're changing that in a couple other ways. So we're actually going to bring two ordinances. One's an urban camping ordinance, the other one's a parks code, but there's urban camping also in that code. And so we're, I'm not particularly concerned about that proposition, but we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, all communities are going to be subject to that, and so we're not going to be unique in that regard. And so,
But Jim, what you said at the beginning, I think is important. We don't think that law will get passed. We just believe that because we are enforcing it and we're going out into the community, we don't tolerate whole blocks.
We just had an example, Brett.
But not in necessarily a business, it's impacting a business.
Oh, it
right?
is?
No.
Oh, it's just
our
in
public
a,
right away.
Yeah.
it's
so,
not, okay.
yeah.
It's on the city easement.
So I
Okay.
think that's the distinction. We wouldn't tolerate that.
and
I
also,
have been to, I have to say, I would agree. I think we do a fantastic job, but I have been to businesses that have talked about the loitering around that have discouraged customers from coming because of safety reasons. So I have heard that in the last couple of years. So
Superstition Springs especially.
in the Asian district is where I've heard it. But, so anyway, just, I don't think we'll be, I don't think we'll end up reimbursing anybody's secondary property tax, but I just bring it up because it is gonna pass. We should look at it. We should understand how it's gonna affect potentially this change, which I absolutely agree with, the change, but.
So as Jim just mentioned, the proposed updates to the city code would include, I think it's the next slide, yeah, would include the creation of an urban camping ordinance, which would fall under the police regulations and can be enforced throughout the entire city. And then you'll hear Andrea, she'll talk to you guys about what the upcoming changes or amendments to the Parks Code would mean. One of the major differences in how we're going to, are planning to enact for the urban camping and the change that's going to come to the Parks Code for camping is changing it from a Class 1 misdemeanor to a Class 3 misdemeanor. In the decision in the city of Grants Pass, the Grants Pass ordinance made it very similar to what would be a Class 3 misdemeanor here. So that would include fines, and 30 days maximum would be the penalty if they were to serve any time in jail. So to put into perspective, in Arizona, what our classes of misdemeanors are, the punishments for a Class 1 misdemeanor could be up to 180 days in jail, 3 years of probation, and a maximum of $2,500 fine. A Class 2 misdemeanor would be 120 days in jail, 2 years of probation, and a $750 fine. And again, these are all the maximums for each. The Class 3 misdemeanor carries a penalty of potentially 30 days in jail, a year of probation, and a $500 fine. So what we are looking at is to make our penalty more in line with what the penalty was in Grants Pass. And that's actually in alignment with several of our neighboring cities. So Tucson, their urban camping penalty is a Class 3 misdemeanor. Scottsdale, the way that they enforce it is a Class 3 misdemeanor. And the city of Phoenix, their parks camping is a Class 3 misdemeanor.
So moving into the summary of changes that'll be introduced on the November 18th agenda, the urban camping ordinance is one, and then we'll have a second one with public park regulations updates, the second ordinance. The urban camping ordinance takes the definition of what urban camping is and camp paraphernalia definitions and applies it then to city properties and city right-of-way, which is, again, similar to what other communities are doing. The second one, the public park regulations ordinance, updates the level of violation for all of the park code. Because when we looked at making camping, moving from a Class 1 to a Class 3 misdemeanor, it didn't make sense to continue to have everything else in the Parks Code, which is the way it was written currently, as Class 1 misdemeanors. And so we're creating definitions of those violations for civil violations, Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 violations for all the park codes. So that's why there are more changes in there. So for example, abandoning items for distribution, shopping carts in the parks, and camping, again, go from Class 1 to Class 3, a less severe misdemeanor. And then littering, failing to pick up dog waste, ice blocking, water slides in the parks, those kinds of things are no longer Class 1, they're going to civil violations.
I love, you guys didn't do ice.
Oh, I know, they're just ruining the whole experience.
So fun as a kid. You get a big block of ice.
So, Mayor and Council, can we just pause right here? This is, I wanted you to get, this is what the ordinance, we have 6 more slides. And they're great slides, because they're going to talk about how we're out engaging with the homeless, but they're, you know, they're kind of related to the ordinance too, because we want to emphasize we're leading with services. But this is what's on the council agenda for the 18th. We can stop here, because we want to come back maybe at some point and highlight the continuing off the streets program, what's happening in the parks. We can continue doing that right now. I just know that you're missing meetings, there's things getting held up, but we could stop right here, because this is the essence of the ordinance itself. If you have questions about that. We can also keep going. We're gonna highlight what park rangers are doing and what was happening in the court, but I just wanna give you that option right here.
Can we do it before the meeting on the 18th? Can we do this
Oh, sure.
presentation so that we're doing it soon?
Yeah, no.
I don't want to push it off.
No, yeah, no, it's just highlighting
Yeah.
the kind of the outreach that we're doing. We can do that. We can do it now, but I know times we're getting late, so.
I'm fine, but do we need to leave?
I kind of need to leave.
Okay.
I was just
well,
kind of
let's do it.
reading the language,
Yeah.
we might need we can wrap it up now. Are there any questions on the ordinance itself?
I don't want to, I just think this is a really important thing to discuss for our community especially, and so I don't want to rush through it right now, but I also don't want to rush through it if we do it at the study session on the 18th.
This
so-
isn't changing.
Yeah.
What we want to present to you is the ordinance. Everything else
Right.
is kind of what we're doing, if you would, outside the ordinance to deal with homelessness and in a kind of service offering first. That's all we were going to talk about.
Sounds like we should do it on the 18th.
We can do that.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, thank you, we'll look forward to that.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you very much.
I mean,
right.
do you have other stuff on the 18th?
Oh, well, we just, utilities, no, the
For the
nice,
study session?
no, that's what we did today, right? That's why I apologize for today, but because we're having a study session on the 14th. The drone, the utilities, this are all on that agenda on the 18th. And since I knew I was going to have an opportunity to be in front of you before then, that's why we did it
So you
today.
didn't have another presentation necessarily planned for our study session on the 18th? Like, do we need to meet at 4:45 or 5 or something?
We will
or-
probably have to do that. We'll
Okay.
have to have an earlier start
Okay.
time, yeah. We'll let you know about that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on, item 2 is to acknowledge receipt of meeting minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Summers and Ms. Pillsbury. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. I'll note that we've lost Mr. Heredia and Mr. Freeman, but that's a 5-0 vote. Next is the current events and conferences attended. Council members, anything you'd like to share with us?
She wants to go. I'll say something real quick. Yesterday, I did a tour with the Urban Transformation, Jeff McVeigh with the Urban Transformation Team, a downtown tour with a Mesa leadership class. Makes me proud every time we do a tour to see the successes we have there. I'll let you talk about SRP Sustainability Champions, that is significant for our city and our commitment to sustainability. And last night I attended a historic preservation community meeting. We had a great attendance, maybe 35 people or so, and to have that regular rapport with our historic homeowners to protect and enhance our historic districts. So thank you to Matt, our new historic preservation officer, and all that attended.
Thank you. Yesterday, Mr. Summers and Ms. Duff and I went to receive an award from Salt River Project at an award ceremony called the Champions of Sustainability Awards. We were the only city that was recognized. It was really quite a prestigious event. I think you guys know that SRP gives us a rebate if we do certain things, to be more energy efficient, and we always max out that rebate. We get $300,000, the last few years for that, but And so just kind of in keeping it with that recognition, they talked about how we are, the LD lights that we've replaced for our street lights and how much energy that has saved, the investment in electric vehicle infrastructure, and we were there with the folks from our fire department talking about the electric fire truck. So very proud of our sustainability staff and our fire department staff that helped us collect that award yesterday. Mr. Summers.
Just add to that, wasn't it in the presentation from Scott Boucher that says we always try to max out that $300,000 rebate from SRP? I think he had made mention to that, which is a great point about what the city is doing to find ways to improve energy efficiency and receive the rebates from our private partners that are willing to invest in that, so.
Thank you. We can't, I'm sorry, Council, anything else you'd like to share with us?
A couple of things for the weekend, but
Oh, well, I at some point, I want, obviously, we just finished a significant event in our nation and in our community with the election. I think we are still, it's too early to talk about some of the elections for mayor and council. I think that's close to being resolved, but we'll acknowledge that at the appropriate time. But I think it is clear that we did win questions 1 through 4. So, Mr. Brady, talk about the significance.
Listen, Mayor and Council, this is incredible, unprecedented. I mean, as I described, it was a landslide. All 4 of our questions, I think it's easy. I think we can still say 3 of the 4 were at or near 70% approval, which that doesn't happen in American politics these days. And then the poor one that was at 65%, even if that had been the 65% by itself, we'd been thrilled. So just thanks to so many people for all the staff that worked so hard to put all those projects together. And we think we started at like $500 million worth of projects, right? And the effort to get that down and present that to council, getting feedback from council. And then remember all those open houses we went to, some better attended than others, to Anna and her staff who really got the information out into the community through social media, through the newspapers about explaining and informing about the projects, to Jim and his staff and working with the clerk's office and our staff writing the language that went into the ballot. The idea that we could say no tax increase in the permanent base adjustment, I think really helped. So with the polling we did to make sure we understood how people looked at these issues, it's interesting, the polling we did before these initiatives went out and what the results were eerily the same. The only one they messed up on was the general plan, which they suggested was much lower than it ended up, and it ended up at 70-something%. So just remember that 2 years of that outreach on the general plan. We had a Martinelli celebration yesterday because it was just so incredible. So I want to thank the council for your support in helping us really carry this through, because I know there was a lot of work after what staff can't see because we can't participate is going out in the communities. I know Councilmember Summers was out there and all of you talking to communities, but it was incredible, right? You think how split the vote was in so many other issues. This is one where we could say, all of Mesa was on board and supporting. It's just an incredible experience. So the next round, what we'll owe to you, we'll probably bring back the first of the year, is now we'll take all those projects, right? Remember, this is a 5-year program, and begin to kind of decide kind of where they fall in that 5-year program. There's some projects that have to go right now. Idea Museum, we know it's ready to go. Sorine House. So there's some things that are ready to go. Other things just with time and purchasing land. So we'll bring that back to kind of the schedule of what that looks like. But anyway, I want to thank our residents for having trust in the city of Mesa. There's not too many communities can say they can go and put something on the ballot and get 70% support. There's just, I don't know where that exists. Yeah, and this year. So it's a proud moment in Mesa. So thanks to everybody who helped make it happen.
Well, congratulations to you and your staff, and congratulations, frankly, to the political leadership as well. So,
and Mike Hutchins and that group that helped do the campaign, I think is important too.
Yeah. Thank you to the folks who helped put on those signs that you saw on the road. Didn't just magically appear. All right, thank you. Jen, you want to talk about some scheduling things?
Yeah, this weekend is a Veterans Day weekend. There's a couple of big events in downtown. One is the barbecue Classic is a little bit different than last year, and so that is going to be Friday night between 5 to 9 is a dessert and appetizer competition. But the big thing on the barbecue will be on Saturday from 11 to 5. There is a competition. You can buy samples. There's going to be a beer garden, live music, and so it's right down on McDonald where we hold our events, and it's a free event. So please come down. Also, because it's Veterans Day weekend, Cider Corps is having a 3-day festival and doing a lot of different things. Go on their social to see what's going on. But we're so proud of that business to have them in downtown as a couple of veterans themselves who made a successful business. And they really celebrate and regard our veterans and are doing a big, big festival. So come check it out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Cider Corps. 30 South McDonald, I think. Robson? Yeah, thanks.
Also, I'll reiterate that Sunday is the RAF Memorial event at the Mesa City Cemetery. I think it actually starts at 10:45, but you'll want to be there by 10:30. And again, if you haven't attended this event before, you really owe it to yourself to check it out. It's a fascinating part of Mesa's history, very patriotic, very compelling event.
And of course, Monday, we have our Veterans Day Parade. So in downtown Mesa, we'll have our Veterans Day Parade, so please come. It'll be lots of fun.
11 to 1.
11 to 1.
11 to 1. Great. Council, anything else you'd like to share? Mr. Brady, did we already cover future events?
Just real quickly, study session for the 14th is canceled for NLC. And we will probably, we also have a presentation. We want to give you an update on the ARPA funds on the 18th. So there'll probably be a pretty early start time. And we'll get that to you, 4:30, 4:45. We'll let you know about that because we'll have multiple presentations.
Okay, sounds good. That concludes our agenda for this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Summers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.